Chapter 12:22. When the helicopter lowered its altitude in the air, Qin Weibai in the cabin saw Wang Xiaoyao for the first time. There was no dawn in the Dawn Islands at this time. It was dark and hazy for 24 hours. Wang Xiaoyao stood under the fluttering flag at the gate of the headquarters of the Aurora Legion. His clothes and flag were undulating in the cold wind, looking a little lonely and bleak. Qin Weibai's expression was calm and a little indifferent, but there was some thought in her eyes. The helicopter landed slowly. Wang Xiaoyao walked over against the roaring airflow caused by the rotors. He looked up at the vague face in the cabin that had appeared in his dreams countless times, and his eyes were a little dazed. The rotors were still spinning, but the speed gradually weakened, became slower, and finally stopped. The door of the helicopter slowly opened, and Qin Weibai, wrapped in a coat and shawl, walked out of the cabin. Gu Xianyan followed her, and Eagle King, the current deputy commander of the Snowdance Corps, was at the back. Anyway, even if they all knew that the Aurora Legion did not dare to touch Qin Weibai, the young madam of the Li family now appeared in the eastern part of the European continent. No matter how bold the Snowdance Corps was, it was impossible for them to let her and Gu Xianyan come to the Dawn Islands. Eagle King following them was the most basic attitude. Qin Weibai glanced at Wang Xiaoyao. Her eyes were calm and distant. It seemed that the distance of thousands of miles was stretched longer and longer in this glance. Wang Xiaoyao's palm moved, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He was a little self-deprecating. Qin Weibai did not shake hands with him. The goddess of the dark world did not have the habit of shaking hands with anyone. She had always been so high and mighty, looking down on everyone and the whole world. It was a kind of blasphemy for anyone to even approach her. Wang Xiaoyao had crazily pursued her for several years, but he had not even touched Qin Weibai's hand, let alone a little intimate action. To be exact, she did not even let Wang Xiaoyao get within 1 meter of her. So she was high and mighty, and she was unparalleled in the world. She naturally stood on the ethereal clouds and noble altar. She was so beautiful and otherworldly. Wang Xiaoyao had even thought before that it did not matter if he could not catch up with her in his life. It did not matter if he could not touch a finger of her in his life. It seemed that such a woman could not be touched by men in the world at all. Wang Xiaoyao was sure that he could pursue her for a lifetime. He could not get married, could not have children, could not have anything. He really didn't have any requirements. If all the men in the world could not get Qin Weibai, then he just wanted to be the man closest to her, even if they were just ordinary friends. That period of time, those thoughts were very bitter, but when he thought about it, there was also a faint sense of warmth. Then Li Tianlan appeared. He appeared beside Qin Weibai so naturally and easily. And Qin Weibai handed herself over to that young boy so naturally and easily. Who was Li Tianlan? Li Tianlan. To the end. So what? Something. Wang Xiaoyao felt that he seemed to have forgotten the state he was in when he first got the news. He remembered Qin Weibai's happiness and pride when she held Li Tianlan's arm and announced that he was her man. She remembered that when they were in the Sky Academy, before Li Tianlan went to East Island, Qin Weibai put her arms around his neck and kissed him gently and sweetly. At that time, Li Tianlan, who had just left the Li family, felt inferior and confident, and was at a loss for what to do, was as young and inexperienced as a fool. He thought back to the countless nights when that ignorant brat had embraced the girl he had pursued for years but had never gotten close to. Did he regard her as a treasure? Or did he casually and carelessly enjoy the docility and flattery of the goddess? Her coldness, her distance, her politeness, her strength, and all the things that could make people feel distant, unapproachable, and difficult to get along with naturally disappeared when she was in front of Li Tianlan. She was as passionate as fire and amorous. Every gesture she had before was just because she had not met the man she liked. At that time, Wang Xiaoyao understood that there was no such thing as an unattainable goddess. No matter how inviolable a goddess was, she would become a demon in front of her man, releasing all her charm and passion. It was also at that time that Wang Xiaoyao understood that the idea of protecting her for a lifetime was just his wishful thinking, which made him feel happy and bitter when he thought of that time. All his pursuit and sincerity really did not leave any trace in her heart. In his eyes, Qin Weibai was the goddess who occupied the whole world and all his soul. In Qin Weibai's eyes, Li Tianlan was her whole world and sky. So in Li Tianlan's eyes, what was Qin Weibai like? The answer that was about to come out was like a knife, stabbing into Wang Xiaoyao's heart, breaking his heart into grains of dust. Goddess? She did not exist. In Li Tianlan's eyes, Qin Weibai was just a woman. A woman who was strong and dignified in the outside world, but in front of him, she would cook for him, warm his bed, and serve him carefully. She would act coquettishly, docile, and even in heat. Li Tianlan might love her very much, but it was obvious that Li Tianlan was in charge of their relationship. Therefore, even though Li Tianlan had Wang Yuetong and Dongqing Rushi by his side, Qin Weibai was still so obedient that no one dared to believe it, but it also broke their hearts. Wang Xiaoyao felt that he had been completely trampled from beginning to end by Li Tianlan, who was still nothing at that time, in terms of personality and dignity. This kind of trampling had nothing to do with status, but because he had obtained the tenderness that he most wanted but was doomed to not get. Wang Xiaoyao's state of mind was completely shattered by the sweetness shown by Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai bit by bit. It became dark, messy, and gloomy. Qin Weibai had never cared about him. Her repeated rejections were so obvious that Wang Xiaoyao didn't understand it at that time. It wasn't until the moment he saw Li Tianlan that he realized what he had done. He was like a mangy dog who kept drooling at delicious food but dared not approach it. His every move was so annoying. He had been crazy, drunk, and angry, but he really could not hate her. Qin Weibai's repeated rejections had already shown her attitude. From beginning to end, she had never given him any chance. There was no ambiguity, no exploitation. She just clearly drew a line with him. His repeated attacks seemed to be relying on his family background to not know what was good for him. He did not hate Qin Weibai. He was just angry at his own incompetence. The rest was endless killing intent for Li Tianlan. It was just that Li Tianlan's rise was too fast. He did not find a chance in East Island. After the final battle of Heaven Capital, Li Tianlan disappeared directly. In 3 years, he had established his position as the first person of the young generation when he came back. He was the youngest combat capability of the invincible realm in the dark world. Wang Xiaoyao sadly found that he could no longer defeat Li Tianlan. Although he had entered the invincible realm at that time. But Wang Xiaoyao did not give up. He found his goal and direction again. He no longer used the name of the Wang family of Beihai to play games in the world and be a damn King Xiaoyao. He was Wang Xiaoyao. He wanted the whole world to remember this name. He wanted to be an expert who could conquer the whole world. He betrayed Mount Dibbing, but he got the most elite force of the Beihai Corps. The comprehensive strength of the Beihai Corps had dropped a level because of his betrayal. The Aurora Legion came out of nowhere. He became an expert at the peak of the invincible realm. He was far away from Zhongzhou State. But his killing intent and hostility toward Li Tianlan were getting stronger and stronger. So when Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu came to him to ask for cooperation, Wang Xiaoyao agreed without hesitation. They wanted the Wang family of Beihai, as long as they had the ability. They wanted the whole dark world, as long as they had the ability. They could have anything they wanted, as long as they were qualified. What Wang Xiaoyao cared about was what they wanted to do. Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu wanted to kill Li Tianlan in the final battle of Beihai. At that time, the lineup seemed to have great hope, and this hope deeply touched Wang Xiaoyao's soul. Wang Xiaoyao agreed to cooperate. He just made a request to Jiang Shangyu and Li Guangtu. If the final battle of Beihai was won, the interests of Beihai, Emperor Dong's palace, Zhongzhou State, and even the dark world, he didn't want any of it. He only wanted Qin Weibai. The Qin Weibai who made him obsessed, crazy, and even irrational. The Qin Weibai who didn't care about him at all. He only wanted Qin Weibai. Wang Xiaoyao didn't care about her past with Li Tianlan, whether she had a man, or whether she liked him or not. It didn't matter. Because in Wang Xiaoyao's heart, she was still a goddess, superior. He just needed to stay with her quietly. The final battle of Beihai failed. Li Tianlan didn't die, and Emperor Dong's palace didn't collapse. Emperor Dong's invincible aura had completely spread to the whole dark world. He reached the top of the divine list and was the first in the world. The goddess was still a goddess. But countless people in the world were admiring her vision. She didn't have Samsara Palace, and she didn't even have to be the patriarch of the Qin clan. She was Emperor Dong's woman. What did this identity mean? It meant that the Aurora Legion, a behemoth that was only one step away from the real superpower, had to be prepared. It meant that Wang Xiaoyao, as the commander of the Aurora Legion, had nothing to do with Emperor Dong's palace, and even had some hostility. When he learned that Emperor Dong's woman was coming, he could only wait here obediently. Just like the notice that Eagle King gave to Wang Xiaoyao a few hours ago. Yes, it was a notice, without any consultation. Their young madam was coming to the Aurora Legion, so he had to wait. Hostile relationship? True position? This was no longer something that Emperor Dong's palace needed to consider. Now in the whole dark world, perhaps except for the Wang family of Beihai, no other force dared to face Emperor Dong's palace alone. They might still be hostile to Emperor Dong's palace, and even dare to take action. But every action must be a combination of multiple forces, and a careful plan was carried out. But now, Wang Xiaoyao had no doubt that if anything happened to Qin Weibai and the Aurora Legion, the entire Aurora Legion, the entire Dawn Islands, and even the entire special warfare system of Snow Country would be wiped out by Dong Huang's furious sword light. Even if Wang Xiaoyao ran to any corner of the world, he would be caught and hacked into pieces. Qin Weibai walked out of the cabin and got closer and closer. Wang Xiaoyao gently clenched his fist with one hand and kept exerting force. He looked at Qin Weibai silently, and the pain and sorrow in his heart were overwhelming. He didn't know if it was because of the weather, but his face was a little pale. Long time no see. Wang Xiaoyao forced a smile. Little Bai. Call my name. Or call me Mrs. Li, or Patriarch Qin. Qin Weibai smiled gently, dreamily, with the alienation and politeness that Wang Xiaoyao was familiar with. If you call me that, someone will be unhappy. I don't like it either. Wang Xiaoyao's mouth moved, and he finally couldn't help but smile bitterly. I think we are friends. I don't have friends. Qin Weibai's voice was crisp and clear. Neither she nor she, who was lying in the headquarters of the Lin clan, had friends. She was raised by Great Master Wu Wei, and it was her senior brother who had lived with her since she was a child. She walked out of Lin and said goodbye to her adoptive father. She exchanged a book of Dongxing Huangtu's martial arts experience for Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana sword master of Mount Shu, and the sword master became a saint. When Han Donglu was desperate and about to go bankrupt, she helped him out of his predicament and turned over a new leaf, so she had a military counselor. With her own martial arts experience, she helped a female swordsman from East Island to complete her revenge and pointed out her future direction, so she had flaming fire. The 12 super masters gathered around her one by one. Some of them had been famous figures in the dark world for a long time, such as General and Azura who had now joined the Dark Knights. There were also saints and military counselors who rarely appeared and only showed up in rare cases, which were almost incognito. With the 12 supermasters, the Samsara Palace began to officially appear in the dark world. And because of the existence of figures like General Azura, the Samsara Palace always gave people a feeling that it had existed for a long time. But in fact, it was a behemoth that was infinitely close to a superpower set up by a little girl. At that time, there was nothing mysterious about time in front of Qin Weibai. She knew exactly what would happen in the future. She knew the secrets hidden by the wealthy families and the weaknesses they dared not expose. This created the Samsara Palace's unique intelligence department in the world, and it also allowed the Samsara Palace's industry to expand rapidly. The flourishing age fund rose at a speed that stunned the whole world. In the second year after the establishment of the Samsara Palace, the financial storm swept the world from the subcontinent. That was the first carnival of the Samsara Palace. The flourishing age fund swept away nearly 400 billion Zhongzhou dollars in the international financial market in half a year. Han Donglu also became a world-famous legend at that time. Everything in the Samsara Palace looked so incredible. In fact, Qin Weibai didn't have any idea about the 12 supermasters at first. She drew a lot of people to her side. Naturally, there were also people who wanted to betray her, coveted her body, and were not convinced by her. At that time, Qin Weibai was only 16 years old. She was still a child. No matter how high her IQ was, she was still a child. But when this child's instantaneous outburst was comparable to the peak of the invincible realm, the voices inside the Samsara Palace quickly unified. For the Samsara Palace, she was the master of Samsara Palace and also Qin Weibai. This was the core secret of the Samsara Palace. Similarly, she was the most qualified ruler. At least before she met Li Tianlan. She was cold, straightforward, decisive, and had a clear goal. She had the clearest logic of a ruler, but she had no feelings. So Qin Weibai had no friends. Military counselor, saint, and even flaming fire. In her eyes, they were all subordinates and pawns. Li Tianlan was her man. That was all he needed. Wang Xiaoyao looked at him silently for a while, then slowly turned sideways, reached out to the villa behind him, and whispered, "Miss Qin, please." It was impossible for him to address Qin Weibai as Mrs. Li, which clearly confirmed her fate. Maybe it would make Qin Weibai happy, but he couldn't call her that even if he was beaten to death. It's too stuffy inside. Qin Weibai tightened the wide shawl on her body, looked around, and suddenly said with a smile, "Do you mind if I take a look at your Aurora Legion?" Wang Xiaoyao shook his head and turned to lead the way. The Dawn Islands consisted of more than a dozen islands of different sizes. The headquarters of the Aurora Legion was set up on the largest island in the center of the islands. Under the polar night, it was a world of ice and snow, without any kind of warm atmosphere. The headquarters of the Aurora Legion was completely like a monster armed to the teeth. In the distant night, intense but indistinct gunshots could be faintly heard. Countless assault boats were shuttling between the islands. The headquarters of the Aurora Legion was equipped with the most advanced automatic weapon system in Snow Nation. With a push of a button, concentrated firepower could cover every island and every corner of the Dawn Islands with less than 2 centimeters of error. Many roads in the headquarters were still in the process of construction. There were very few patrols and guards here. It seemed that all the defense work had been handed over to the surrounding islands. Therefore, under the curtain of night, the headquarters was dead silent, like a graveyard. It seems that the Aurora Legion is developing well. Snow Country is still very welcoming to you. Is this the famous Yunnan? Qin Weibai asked with a smile as she casually walked in the headquarters of the Aurora Legion. She looked at the cold and silent island and observed the weapon arrays arranged everywhere. It's the U-10, codenamed Red Eagle. It's more stable than the U-9, and it's loaded with 5 more weapon arrays. Its attack is more comprehensive. One of them is a laser weapon array that's not very mature. It can instantly produce a high temperature of more than 5,000 degrees. It's a trump card. Wang Xiaoyao said softly. The U-9 automatic weapon system was a topic that Snow Country had been working on in recent years. The arrival of Wang Xiaoyao brought a lot of variables to this topic. He provided some information about the automatic weapon system of the Wang family of Beihai to Snow Country and helped them break through many technical bottlenecks. The U-10 could be regarded as an upgraded version of the U-9. There was no qualitative change, but its firepower was more powerful. It could be said to be one of the core technologies of Snow Country at present. 5,000 degrees, Qin Weibai murmured to herself. Zhongzhou State, Star State, England, Germany, and the Wang family of Beihai had broken through the bottleneck of laser weapons 10 years ago. A few years ago, they began to tentatively apply it to various cutting-edge armaments. At present, it was far from mature, but it could definitely be said to be advanced. At present, the biggest advantage of laser weapons was the absolute firing speed and the instantaneous high temperature. However, it was not realistic to maintain the absolute firing speed, and it was not very stable. Therefore, all countries studied high temperature. The application of advanced weapons undoubtedly further reduced the role of super experts. What did a high temperature of 5,000 degrees mean? Fire-flaming realm experts could ignite flames out of thin air. A normal expert at the peak of the fire-flaming realm could produce a flame of nearly 300 degrees. Fireman, who was known as the strongest fire-flaming realm expert, could produce a flame of nearly 1,000 degrees when he attacked with all his strength. Even Li Tianlan's current value would not be much higher than that of Fireman. A high temperature of 5,000 degrees was a fatal threat to Li Tianlan. What's the plan of the Aurora Legion in the future? Qin Weibai asked casually. Wang Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Snow Country is different from most countries, and it's also different from East Island. No matter how bad their economy is, their foundation and national strength are there. Their attitude towards the Aurora Legion will not be the same as East Island's attitude towards the Purgatory of Heaven capital. You are now in the honeymoon period of cooperation. They will support you and send you armaments. Behind these gifts, there may be a chronic poison. They will definitely try to conquer the Aurora Legion and conquer you for their use. So although the Aurora Legion is developing well now, it has no prospects. It's like a castle in the air. What are your plans for the future? Qin Weibai said slowly, you need a backing that can support all your actions. Wang Xiaoyao understood what Qin Weibai meant. A backing that could support all his actions and let him take root in Snow Country even if he fell out with Snow Country. Many countries actually had this strength. But considering various reasons, there were very few countries that could meet this condition. The Zhongzhou State Parliament could, but Wang Xiaoyao didn't want to get involved for the time being. In fact, the Parliament of Zhongzhou State had extended an olive branch to him several times, but Wang Xiaoyao had been dragging it on. At this time, turning to the Parliament of Zhongzhou State would mean fighting head-on with Emperor Dong's palace. The current Aurora Legion obviously did not have this kind of strength. The Wang family of Beihai could do that. But he couldn't go back, so he naturally wouldn't receive any support. In addition to the first two, Emperor Dong's palace also had the strength to do so. Wang Xiaoyao was silent for a while and said slowly, if you are here to invite me to join Emperor Dong's palace, I refuse. I don't know how stubborn you are. That's stupid. Qin Weibai's comment was light and merciless. Since Wang Xiaoyao had betrayed the Wang family of Beihai, taking refuge in Emperor Dong's palace was his best choice at the moment. Qin Weibai believed that Wang Xiaoyao could see it clearly. The Zhongzhou State Assembly looked good, but that was all. Li Huaqing's actions seemed to be covetous of Li Tianlan. But he was in Emperor Dong's palace, which showed that he attached great importance to Emperor Dong's palace. If Wang Xiaoyao turned to the council at this time, he would only be a pawn against Li Tianlan, a pawn that could be sacrificed at any time. Emperor Dong's palace was his only choice. She was sure that Wang Xiaoyao knew this. But he refused. If that wasn't stupid, then what was? This is a matter of dignity. Maybe you don't agree, but this is my attitude. I don't want to see the woman I love being whispered in the arms of the man I work for. Even if I succeed, it will be the most thorough failure. Qin Weibai didn't say a word. Her side profile was a little cold and looked more delicate. Wang Xiaoyao's voice was clear and serious. She couldn't tell the truth from the lie. This is not the main purpose of my visit, Qin Weibai said lightly. When Wang Xiaoyao's eyes fell on her, she said slowly, I owe you a favor. Maybe I can pay it back now. Oh. Wang Xiaoyao looked at her quietly. His eyes were quiet, but there was a kind of greed without any other desire in them. It seemed that he wanted to deeply imprint the side profile in his eyes into his bones. We worked together in East Island. Qin Weibai's voice was calm. I said, at the right time, I can pay you back or cooperate with you. It has nothing to do with the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Xiaoyao's eyes quietly condensed for a moment. Of course, he remembered this. On the second day before the final battle of Heaven Capital, beside the fishing village of Ninghu in East Island, he took Demon Eye and cooperated with Samsara Palace to kill an incredible teenager. A teenager who was only in his teens, but broke the limit of his body and exerted the power of the half-step invincible realm. Wang Xiaoyao couldn't evaluate that teenager. He was not a so-called genius. To have that power at that age, Wang Xiaoyao could only see cruelty. If he lived to this day, he might not be as powerful as Li Tianlan, but he was almost sure to be qualified to enter the divine list. Maybe his ranking would be higher than his. Wang Xiaoyao still didn't understand the deep meaning of that cooperation. The lineup of Emperor Dong's palace at that time, even the last sword that killed the teenager, was done by the hidden Samsara Palace master. Wang Xiaoyao didn't know the meaning of Qin Weibai's cooperation with him. Does Wang Tianzong know about this? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. This question came out of the blue, without any warning. Wang Xiaoyao shook his head subconsciously. I don't know. Qin Weibai took a serious look at him. She was still not sure if it was true or not. She said softly, you don't want to join Emperor Dong's palace. With your IQ, you won't join the parliament. Then your life here is destined to be difficult. In the final battle of Beihai, you cut off one of Xiang's arms. She will soon enter the peak of the invincible realm. At that time, she will come to you to get back at you. I'm welcome at any time. Wang Xiaoyao smiled very naturally. He might not be able to catch up with Li Tianlan's realm in this life, but he had never been afraid of anyone in the same realm. Every move of the Dark Knights will cause a chain reaction in many ways. You don't join the parliament or Emperor Dong's palace, but you can't give up Zhongzhou State. As long as you have chips in Zhongzhou State, you have the hope of playing games with all parties here. Qin Weibai's eyelashes trembled slightly. Wang Qinglei is under a lot of pressure, right? Does he want to go further? Wang Xiaoyao's eyes lit up for a moment. He nodded and said yes. In return for that year, I will persuade Tianlan. The power of the new group will support Wang Qinglei as the new director. Qin Weibai's beautiful and ruddy lips raised a little bit. It's just that the relationship between the academy and the new group is tense, and Minister Dongqing's attitude is also very obvious, which will make everyone feel uneasy. In this election, I think to a certain extent, Yi Dongqing's promotion is inevitable, even if it is to check and balance Minister Dongqing. This is the general trend, and it's hard to reverse it at present. Wang Xiaoyao certainly understood this truth, which was also what made Wang Qinglei feel stressed recently. But if he got the support of the new group, Wang Xiaoyao's voice was a little expectant. Do you want to push Qinglei into the cabinet? If he could enter the cabinet, it would undoubtedly be the best choice, and it would be one step closer to Wang Qinglei's ultimate goal. That's also difficult. Whether it's Hua Zhengyang or Wen Xiyuan. Compared to them, Wang Qinglei has no advantage at all. A mysterious smile bloomed from the corner of her mouth. The current position is not very easy to arrange, so I don't think it's necessary for Wang Qinglei to leave Wuyue for the time being. It's good for him to be the director of Wuyue. He can further accumulate capital, and at the same time further control Wuyue. He can also be the director of that position with the least competitive pressure. I think the Prince Group will also agree to this plan. Qin Weibai's voice was soft and clear. As she spoke, her bright eyes were staring at Wang Xiaoyao's eyes, silently observing the changes in Wang Xiaoyao's eyes from the most subtle parts. In the Dawn Islands under the polar night, the night in the morning was very dark. Wang Xiaoyao's cold eyes, which reflected the heaven and earth, seemed to be brighter. Other than that, there was no change. The two of them looked at each other for less than 3 seconds. Wang Xiaoyao turned his head and continued to move forward. His voice sounded softly, faintly, that's fine too. Chapter 12:23. There was a silence in Wang Xiaoyao's voice that was as deep as the night. His answer was simple and ethereal, like the wind blowing over the Dawn Islands, lonely and cold. Qin Weibai's eyes sparkled with the light of thinking, and she didn't speak for a while. She was analyzing what Wang Xiaoyao's answer meant. In fact, Wang Xiaoyao was wrong about one thing. He was not without a trace in Qin Weibai's heart. But this trace had nothing to do with love, but a kind of caution and defense that could not be seen through. Wang Xiaoyao was definitely not a simple person. The whole world knew this very well. It was not because he betrayed the Wang family of Beihai, not because he was an expert at the peak of the invincible realm, and not because of the current atmosphere of the Aurora Legion. Even when he was the King Xiaoyao of the Wang family of Beihai and the coat of a playboy of Beihai, people who really knew Wang Xiaoyao would not underestimate him or even ignore him. Wang Xiaoyao's EQ was extremely high. When he met Qin Weibai, he did a lot of seemingly absurd things in Zhongzhou State. But the reason why those things were so famous was not because they were really rebellious, but because he was Wang Tianzong's younger brother. Many things seemed inconceivable when it came to him. But in fact, Wang Xiaoyao did not really delay the things that he should do. In the inheritance of Beihai from generation to generation, there were more and more branches, and the direct descendants of each generation were rarely alone. Most of the patriarchs of the Wang family of Beihai had brothers or sisters, and sometimes more than one. Most of the brothers and sisters of the North Sea patriarchs were people with extremely high emotional intelligence. They might shake the world, or they might be unknown, or they might be dissolute and unrestrained. No matter how they appeared in front of the world, in reality, there was only one important role for them. That was to be the core link between the Wang family of Beihai and the Southeast Group. This role had been played by the younger brother of the heavenly son of Beihai, the only king parallel in the history of the Wang family of Beihai. The only god of war in the history of Beihai, the ancestor of the Lin clan, and the founder of the Li family, had also played this role. Wang Xiaoyao had also played this role, and he had done an excellent job. The Wang family of Beihai was the top wealthy family in the world, while the Southeast Group was the top group in Zhongzhou State. To some extent, there were innate differences and conflicts between the two groups. Under such circumstances, a person who could absolutely guarantee the interests of the Wang family of Beihai, walk among the many tycoons of the Southeast Group without being ostracized, harmonize the relationship between the two sides, and construct a unified position between the two sides was extremely important. But on the other hand, if Wang Xiaoyao did not turn against Mount Dibbing, her reason could definitely be a perfect excuse. Everything that Wang Xiaoyao had shown so far had no flaws. He personally tore apart the core strength of the Wang family of Beihai, and even left a huge hidden danger to the future of the Wang family of Beihai. This kind of damage was real. This might be a real betrayal. Similarly, a situation without any flaws might mean that it was a flawless game. If Wang Xiaoyao did not betray Mount Dibbing, then what did all this mean now? What was Mount Dibbing plotting? What would the consequences be? Every step of the development of Emperor Dong's palace was the key. At this time, Qin Weibai kept the highest level of vigilance and defense against the Wang family of Beihai. There was no need to emphasize the foundation and strength of the Wang family of Beihai. If Wang Xiaoyao's betrayal was a trap made by Mount Dibbing, then no matter from which standpoint, no matter what they were plotting, Emperor Dong's palace was a part that they could not ignore. They would definitely find a way to drag Emperor Dong's palace into this trap. Maybe Wang Xingxiao or Wang Xiaoyao would do it. At that time, what awaited Li Tianlan might be eternal damnation again. Reorganizing the Li family, fighting against Jiang Shangyu, suppressing Gu Xingyun, and the parliamentary game were all Li Tianlan's problems. The talents and strength of Emperor Dong's palace were enough to deal with these problems. As for Qin Weibai, she had to keep an eye on everything of the Wang family of Beihai. Now they seemed to have taken no action, but maybe they were the most dangerous. Therefore, it was imperative for them to test the waters this time. Wang Qinglei was now in a critical period. His staying or leaving in Wuyue might really reflect Wang Xiaoyao's attitude. But Wang Xiaoyao had no attitude. A simple sentence was fine. He did not reveal any flaws. Was there really no flaws? Qin Weibai was thoughtful. To be honest, if Qin Lei stays in Wuyue as a director, he won't gain much. It's not unprecedented for a provincial speaker to serve as a director, but it's very rare. If possible, I still hope that he can suppress Yi Dongsheng. This is also of great benefit to the new group and Minister Dongsheng. Wang Xiaoyao said slowly, as if he was fighting for something, but also as if he said it unintentionally. Wang Qinglei did have the capital to compete with Hua Zhengyang and Wen Siyuan, but obviously, this capital was not enough. The Prince Group did have the plan to continue to promote powerful figures to control the cabinet, but the rise of the new group made this plan only a plan. The most confident was to let Wang Qinglei and Yi Dongsheng compete. Both of them were competing for the position of director and vice president, but in different directions. If Yi Dongsheng became a director, he would be elected vice president, and he would not lose his current position. He would also be the deputy minister in the army headquarters, only after Dongsheng Wudi. After becoming a director, he would become Dongsheng Wudi's strongest opponent in the army headquarters, and he was fully qualified to disrupt Dongsheng Wudi's layout. If Wang Qinglei became a director and served as vice president, his future direction would have nothing to do with the army headquarters. To some extent, he could be said to be Li Huaqing's deputy. Of course, from another perspective, he could also be said to be Li Huaqing's main opponent. The relationship between the new group and the academy was tense. Li Tianlan had enough reasons to support Wang Qinglei to suppress Yi Dongsheng, which could also make the new group easier in the game with the academy in the future. The new group supported Wen Siyuan, suppressed Yi Dongsheng, and supported Wang Qinglei. Was it contradictory? Not at all. The advance and retreat were all balanced wisdom. The core was for the interests of the group. The complex entanglement was a problem that every person standing at the peak must consider and operate. Therefore, in the face of Qin Weibai's temptation, Wang Xiaoyao, who did not know if he had already noticed her intentions, calmly put forward his own reasons and requirements. And he was above board, which was also impossible to distinguish. So you want Wang Qinglei to leave Wuyue? Qin Weibai suddenly laughed. Her question could already be considered absolutely direct. That was the main purpose of her temptation. The situation was very simple. If Wang Qinglei left Wuyue, the most likely person to replace him to control Wuyue was Yu Chuanguang, and it could only be Yu Chuanguang. Yu Chuanguang was Wang Xiaoyao's real confidant and absolute best friend. And Wang Qinglei was Wang Xiaoyao's closest ally. If Wang Xiaoyao really betrayed Mount Dibing, there would be no difference between the two of them controlling Wuyue. But if Wang Xiaoyao did not betray Mount Dibing, the difference between the two of them controlling Wuyue was like heaven and earth. I'm just fighting for the best situation for us. Wang Xiaoyao said with a calm expression, the new group has the strength to do this. If it succeeds, we also have the strength to give you enough returns. After a pause, he continued, of course, Qinglei must be on the board. If we can't go up from Yuzhou, it's not unacceptable to stay in Wuyue. Staying dormant for a few years will only make us stronger. Qin Weibai smiled. It seemed that she had seen through everything, like a polite echo, or something else. She was still not sure about Wang Xiaoyao's attitude. But she could not be sure, which was already a kind of news. Wang Xiaoyao turned to look at Qin Weibai. Her face became more and more three-dimensional and perfect in the dark night. It was so exquisite that it was like a magnificent and soul-stirring dream. He looked at her bright eyes that he would never forget and suddenly laughed. If she enters the gate of the Wang family of Beihai, maybe the whole Wang family of Beihai should be surnamed Qin instead of Wang after 20 years. Wang Xiaoyao still remembered that his elder brother patted him on the shoulder at that time. It was very soft, but it was so heavy that it made his heart cold. He said, forget it. A long time after that, he talked to Wang Tianzong about Qin Weibai again and talked about his evaluation of Qin Weibai. At that time, Wang Tianzong did not praise Qin Weibai's unrivaled beauty. But that evaluation was still fresh in Wang Xiaoyao's memory. Her heart is like a flying dragon and a dancing phoenix, and her divine moon shoots the cold river. For the first time in his life, Wang Xiaoyao heard his talented and bold elder brother evaluate a woman like that. A young woman in her 20s. But Wang Xiaoyao did not give up. He tried harder to get close to her, and every word he said to her could make him happy for a long time. Until Li Tianlan appeared. Until she leaned against Li Tianlan's arms. Her flying dragon and a dancing phoenix. Her moon shoots the cold river. All the things that made him toss and turn in his dreams became a real dream, shattered under the cruel reality, and had nothing to do with him. Wang Xiaoyao put down his palm completely. Under the curtain of night, the vague sharpness slowly dissipated. He looked at Qin Weibai's eyes. It was like the first time they met. Her eyes were always full of fog, looking into the distance. He did not see his shadow in those eyes. Wang Xiaoyao smiled reluctantly. His face was still pale, and he said with difficulty, "I'm just kidding." "No." Qin Weibai shook her head and said with a faint smile, "You're trying to change the subject and divert my attention, right?" For the first time, Wang Xiaoyao's expression was stiff. It flashed away. "I haven't been updating regularly in the past 2 days. In fact, I want to write more. A few days ago, it was very windy. I slept with the window open all night, and then enjoyed the air conditioner during the day. I don't know if it was cold or hot, but I began to have a low fever and felt weak all over. Yesterday was even more tragic. It's a little painful. It's not an adjective. It's a real pain in the balls. I feel like they're swollen. I went to the hospital to have a checkup today, and it's not a big problem. Then when I came back, I found that it's not a pain in the balls, but a pain in the flesh. Damn, I took off my pants and came back, and then I found that. Anyway, it's very uncomfortable. When I feel better, I'll try to write more." Chapter 12:24. The sound of the rotor disturbed the darkness. The helicopter parked at the headquarters of the Aurora Legion slowly rose into the air and flew away in the roaring sound. He came calmly, but he left calmly. Qin Weibai did not stay for breakfast, nor did she enter Wang Xiaoyao's villa. They talked for an hour and just walked a small circle around the island of the headquarters of the Aurora Legion. After the talk, they left. Neat and tidy. The temperature in the eastern part of the European continent was really cold. In the cabin of the helicopter, Qin Weibai wrapped herself in a brand new blanket again. However, this was not the extremely luxurious private plane after all. There was no soft and spacious leather sofa, no music reverberating through the top sound system, and no hand-ground coffee. Qin Weibai's body, wrapped in a blanket, swayed slightly in the somewhat bumpy cabin. She held a thermos cup that had been used for many years. It contained the black tea that the army prepared for her to warm her body before she set off from the Snowdance Corps. At this time, the temperature was just right. Qin Weibai sipped the tea and looked at the Aurora Legion that was getting farther and farther outside the cabin. The entire Dawn Islands turned into a blurry light as the helicopter flew past. Qin Weibai's pupils were filled with mist, mysterious and hazy. "Sister Qin, have you got the answer?" Gu Xianyan looked at Qin Weibai and asked curiously. When Qin Weibai and Wang Xiaoyao were talking, she and Eagle King had been following behind them. They were neither too far nor too close, so they could hear what they were talking about. However, after Gu Xianyan sorted out the various conversations, she found that she did not understand some of them. "I got it." Qin Weibai said softly and shook her head. "I didn't get it either." Then Wang Xiaoyao, Gu Xianyan became more and more curious. The best and the worst make history, and the mediocre reproduce the race. Qin Weibai said with a smile, "We have to admit that this world belongs to bigotry. The bigoted Li family, the bigoted Wang family of Beihai, and the 2 brothers of this generation of Beihai are also bigoted. I still don't understand." Gu Xianyan looked at Qin Weibai innocently. Qin Weibai looked at her and said softly, "I'm still not sure if Wang Xiaoyao betrayed Mount Dibbing. This is indeed the answer I want, but it's not the one I want the most. I'm here just to make sure of one thing." Can I use Wang Xiaoyao to guide some future situations of the Wang family of Beihai? The answer should be certain. That's enough. Wang Xiaoyao may have betrayed Mount Dibbing, or maybe he didn't, but it doesn't matter. I can be sure that he did not betray the Wang family of Beihai. Eagle King, who had been silent, suddenly smiled. From a certain point of view, Wang Qinglei did not betray the Wang family of Beihai. He just betrayed Wang Tianzong. He thought that the Wang family of Beihai that he and Wang Xiaoyao would lead in the future would be better than it is now, even the best. If not for this reason, Wang Qinglei had no need to betray him. Indeed. Qin Weibai nodded. But Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Qinglei are still different. The former can pay more, even everything, for some purposes. The latter may be more intelligent, but it lacks some boldness. So in the alliance between them, the future patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai is Wang Xiaoyao, and Wang Qinglei only wants to be the president. Eagle King's voice was calm. Patriarch, Qin Weibai was thoughtful. She carefully recalled the conversation just now, summed up what she had learned, and analyzed every expression of Wang Xiaoyao. An hour of conversation. They could talk about a lot of things, or a lot of nonsense. It mainly depended on how Qin Weibai tested him. Many of Qin Weibai's words were impolite, even a little mean. She didn't care what impression she left in Wang Xiaoyao's mind. It had nothing to do with her. She only cared about what real information she got from this conversation. There was no doubt that Wang Xiaoyao was vigilant and guarded against Emperor Dong's palace. Many of the things he said were vague. But at least Qin Weibai could be sure that the cooperation between Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Qinglei was definitely not as close as it seemed. In Qin Weibai's eyes, this was undoubtedly a clue that could be used. What happened inside the Wang family of Beihai had nothing to do with her. She always cared about how Emperor Dong's palace should develop under the new situation after the great changes in Beihai, how to avoid traps, and how to find opportunities. Wang Xiaoyao said some things in the conversation, some of which he didn't even notice. But Qin Weibai had begun to think and tried to make a plan. The final battle of Heaven Capital, the chaos in Snow Country, the dawn of a new era, and the Samsara Palaces step by step were the plans of the master of Samsara Palace, and also Qin Weibai's thoughts. They were the same person. All the situations that were confusing to outsiders were constructed bit by bit in this kind of silence. Go back to Tiannan. Qin Weibai whispered, I want to be quiet for a while. She took out her notebook and began to record every word of the conversation with Wang Xiaoyao. She planned to go back and carefully analyze it when she calmed down completely. Eagle King nodded and gave an order to the cockpit. The helicopter began to accelerate in the night. His phone rang abruptly. Qin Weibai took out her phone and looked at the number. It was military counselor's call. It was officially 3:00 in the afternoon in Yuzhou. Qin Weibai calmly pressed the answer button and said, Hello. Your Highness, there is a breakthrough in Lu Yang's problem. Military counselor's voice sounded with a hint of a smile. Qin Weibai subconsciously sat up straight. A comprehensive breakthrough. Yes, he explained Zhao Yu's problem. Military counselor's voice was obviously a little excited. Lu Yang. The speaker of Anong in Liaodong. There was no possibility of stopping the growing storm in Liaodong. It would only get bigger and bigger. And Anton had become a real powder keg. 3 days ago, Lu Yang, the speaker of Anong, was controlled by Liaodong's Ministry of Supervision. In 3 days, Anong, the powder keg, finally exploded. And it was a real big fish that came out of it. Zhao Yu. The deputy speaker of Liaodong, one of Bai Qingxian's main opponents in Liaodong, was also likely to become the governor of Liaodong after Bai Qingxian left Liaodong. Lu Yang's problem involved Zhao Yu. It was self-evident what it meant. Once Zhao Yu's problem was confirmed, the whole of Liaodong, even Wang Wei, the current leader of the third supervisory group, would be in a precarious and desperate situation. Qin Weibai gently raised the corner of her mouth. Now Ji Wenzhang will have a headache. Obviously, Zhao Yu's problem would be investigated through the special task force set up by the Ministry of Supervision of Zhongzhou State. This was Ji Wenjiang's responsibility. Now the whole Southeast group was trying to avoid this situation, but it was obviously unavoidable this time. Wait for Beihai to officially enter. Qin Weibai whispered. Chapter 1225. Have you discussed this matter with Tianlan? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. Of course, I just called His Majesty. Military Counselor's answer was very calm. Qin Weibai smiled and felt that she thought too much. Emperor Dong's palace was Li Tianlan's, and Military Counselor was also Li Tianlan's chief administrative officer. If anything happened, he would naturally report to Li Tianlan immediately. If Qin Weibai was the master of Samsara Palace, Military Counselor might confuse this order, but now she was just her. They were the same person. She emphasized this matter many times, and so did the master of Samsara Palace, but after all, not everyone could accept this matter, even if it was the truth. Saint could accept it, because when he first got Dongxing Huangtu's martial arts experience, when he clearly saw his road to the invincible realm, he knew very well who he would be loyal to in the future, not to Samsara Palace, but to Li Tianlan. So his code name was Saint. Horsewoman could accept it, but at the beginning, she might have had other thoughts. Her loyalty came from the little things she had done in the Qin clan over the past 2 years. But this did not represent what others thought. For example, flaming fire. In the heart of the former first super master of Samsara Palace, now the Queen of Dark, she had always been a thief who replaced her boss, stole her identity, her man, and her future. The point was that the master of Samsara Palace was willing to do all this. Flaming Fire, who valued her boss more than herself, could not accept all this. Qin Weibai knew that Flaming Fire did not like her. And what was very strange was that she and the master of Samsara Palace were really the same person. The similarity was in all aspects and details. But when Flaming Fire faced them, she could always tell which one was her real boss at first glance. She almost did not hide her hostility, vigilance, and defense against Qin Weibai. So when the chaos in Snow Country ended, when the Eternal Sword fell, and when Qin Weibai successfully replaced the master of Samsara Palace, the sense of powerlessness that had been suppressed in Flaming Fire's heart for a long time broke out completely and turned into boundless anger and despair. She left the Samsara Palace. For more than 2 years, she had no contact with Emperor Dong's palace. All this was meaningless. But she still persisted in a daze. So did Flaming Fire. It was the same for the Military Counselor. For Military Counselor, the current Qin Weibai was not the woman who had pulled him out of the desperate situation. If she wasn't, then she wasn't. There was nothing to argue about. There was only one person he was truly loyal to. Not Li Tianlan, not Qin Weibai, but the master of Samsara Palace who was on the verge of death. This kind of loyalty was not the slightest bit fake. The Flourishing Age Fund nominally belonged to him, but in fact, he only held 3% of the shares of the Flourishing Age Fund. The remaining 97% belonged to Qin Weibai, and now belonged to Li Tianlan. Countless share transfer agreements were signed the moment the Flourishing Age Fund merged into Emperor Dong's palace. The Flourishing Age Fund was the source. Thousands of agreements representing countless interests of various groups and fields were eagerly handed to Li Tianlan by Military Counselor. Now he was the chief administrative officer of Emperor Dong's palace. But for Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai, Military Counselor was just doing his duty. He had no loyalty. He just wanted to cultivate a qualified chief administrative officer, then retire in peace and travel around the world. He also did not approve of the current Qin Weibai. Of course, he couldn't call her first and then inform Li Tianlan. What did Tianlan say? All kinds of thoughts kept flashing through her mind, and Qin Weibai's voice was a little lower. His Majesty asked me to be careful recently. Military Counselor said with a smile. Qin Weibai also laughed. Just from this response, it could be seen that Li Tianlan was now gradually becoming mature. he could also see the real core and key of things. Qin Weibai's somewhat depressed mood began to become a little happy, and her desire to return to Tiannan became more urgent. Yes, be careful. That's my advice too, Qin Weibai said. She and Li Tianlan were naturally not worried about the safety of Military Counselor. Military Counselor was a top expert of the half-step invincible realm. Because of his age, there was no hope for him to break through to the invincible realm. But in today's dark world, except for the dozen people on the new divine list, no one else was a threat to him. They hoped that Military Counselor would be careful about the industry of the Flourishing Age Fund. I can only say I'll try my best. Military Counselor was a little helpless. Zhao Yu will not be the end, Qin Weibai reminded him. I'm afraid that a cornered dog will do something desperate. Military Counselor sighed. The problem of Zhao Yu, deputy speaker of Liaodong, could be said to have shocked the whole Zhongzhou state. This was a bloody storm that Bai Qingqian personally set off in the core backyard of the academics. The outside world was praising the courage of this female speaker, and it could also see the tragedy of this confrontation. Zhao Yu would definitely not be the end of the storm in Liaodong. Even in a sense, this was just a starting point. Once the supervisory department of Liaodong broke through Zhao Yu again, there was no doubt that the whole Liaodong would really be turned upside down. At that time, it would be almost impossible for the academy to keep Liaodong intact. This knife was completely cut at the academy's vital point, and it almost hurt to the bone. No matter what happened next, the academics would certainly not bear it, and the counterattack was expected. A cornered dog will do something desperate. Now the big shots of the academy probably wanted to tear up Emperor Dong's palace. And the Flourishing Age Fund was undoubtedly the best breakthrough for the academy. There were too many industries of the Flourishing Age Fund, and the problems could be said to be continuous. As long as they investigated, they would inevitably find something. The joint investigation of various departments now seemed to have fallen into an unprecedented deadlock. Many people in the outside world were speculating that the academics would find another breakthrough and fight back from other places, so as to avoid causing an uncontrollable social disaster and even damaging the economy of Zhongzhou state. But the real insiders would understand that this was impossible. The academics would not give up on a new breakthrough. But they would not give up on the Flourishing Age Fund either. The current slow investigation was undoubtedly to numb Emperor Dong's palace, and it was also some secret operation carried out by the academics. They were looking for a way to deal a heavy blow to the Flourishing Age Fund and the new group without causing a loss to the economy of Zhongzhou state. In fact, there was such a way. And it was very obvious. That was what the academics was doing now. The only way to break a deep-rooted economic monster in Zhongzhou state and to ensure the stability of Zhongzhou state was to use the power of another economic monster. An economic monster that was even more terrifying in size than the one to be broken. Only with its strong intervention could the situation be stabilized in the shortest time possible. And in the entire Zhongzhou state, among all the forces, there was only one economic monster that could be bigger than the Flourishing Age Fund. The Wang family of Beihai. During this time, the academics had been secretly negotiating with Wang Xingxiao, hoping that the Wang family of Beihai could take action. Wang Xingxiao can't delay for long, Qin Weibai said calmly. The problem of Liaodong can't be delayed. Yes. Military Counselor smiled bitterly. I'm afraid I'm going to be very busy. The problem of Zhao Yu in Liaodong was no longer a problem that the supervisory department of Liaodong could fully control. It had to be reported. The supervisory department of Zhongzhou state was bound to take action for such a problem. The Southeast group, which had been avoiding getting involved in the game between the academics and the new group, could be said to have no way to avoid it this time. Ji Wenzhang would definitely take a stand. His statement undoubtedly offended the academics to some extent. Under such circumstances, how could the Wang family of Beihai refuse to take action against the Flourishing Age Fund? In the eyes of the academics, there was no doubt that the Southeast group and the Wang family of Beihai were already suspected to be on the side of Emperor Dong's palace. And the most important thing was that such a stance would not benefit the Wang family of Beihai at all. The supervisory department was bound to support the storm in Liaodong. And as a condition to ease the relationship with the academics, the Wang family of Beihai would definitely help the academics. This was the same as the new group supporting Wen Siyuan and suppressing Yi Dongxing at the same time. The academics would also help the academics suppress the Flourishing Age Fund while suppressing Liaodong. The chaos was ahead. Everyone was making a choice. There was no friend or foe. It was just for themselves. Chapter 12:26. The darkest time before dawn had passed. Outside the window, the world ushered in the morning light again. There was no morning sun, no rain or snow. Under the hazy sky, the wind was whistling sharply on the window lattice. The light in the study was still on. The tea at hand was the last sip. The cigarette in his hand was the last trace. The information in his hand was the last line. Ji Wenjiang smoked, drank tea, put down the information, and opened the curtain beside him. Outside the window, it was a cold windy winter day. The violent airflow blew the trees outside the window, some dry flower beds, and the fallen leaves were flying. It was extremely lonely. Ji Wenjiang looked at it silently, very silent and very calm. As one of the directors of Zhongzhou State, he had a very tight schedule in Wuyue this time. Yesterday, he talked with Wang Qinglei until midnight. Before he had time to rest after coming back, he received the news from Liaodong. After reading the information in his hand overnight, he had to talk with the 12 directors of Wuyue after Wang Qinglei one by one in the morning. After dealing with these things, it was already afternoon. He would return to Zhongzhou State as soon as possible to deploy and guide the supervision of Liaodong. It was urgent. This was Ji Wenjiang's attitude. Yes, when the whole Zhongzhou State was silently watching the conflict between Emperor Dong's palace and the academics, and when the Southeast group was trying its best to avoid being involved in this storm, Ji Wenjiang had decided to take action. Some things were about principles. These were things that could overwhelm one's standpoint. They could not be compromised in the first place. Once again, he thought of the case described in the urgent document from Liaodong. At present, there was no need to doubt that the storm in Liaodong was already the biggest case of wandering thought since the founding of Zhongzhou State. This case was still shrouded in too much fog so far. What was certain was that behind the fog, there was bound to be a more sensational truth. Just a blurry image of the veins was enough to make one's heart tremble. Lu Yang mentioned Zhao Yu, the deputy speaker of Liaodong. And the problems he explained were far more than just Zhao Yu. Using Enong as a springboard to connect halfway and halfway as a transit station to snow country. This line had actually existed for a long time. Every country would have some hidden chains in the dark. With a bright identity, they used dark means to contact the shady people abroad and get some tacit benefits. The line in Enong was a chain hidden in the dark in Zhongzhou State. It was just that this line had existed for too long, so it gradually changed its flavor. Lu Yang had served in Enong for close to 20 years. A few years ago, Bai Qingxian had wanted to transfer Lu Yang to Fengtian as the deputy governor. However, Lu Yang had rejected the offer. According to his confession, he was a nail in Enong, constantly creating benefits for some people behind him. He transported large amounts of food, cigarettes, and wine to the peninsula. At the same time, he sent some young and beautiful peninsula women who lived in difficult living conditions to Liaodong and Snow Country. They could also obtain large amounts of cheap arms and even some heavy industrial goods from Snow Country. This train of thought was still vague so far, but the things involved were appalling. The interests involved in what Lu Yang had told them were already unimaginable. Now, with Zhao Yu's fall, the standard of the incident had completely escalated. After the intervention of the Zhongzhou State's Ministry of Supervision, it was destined to cause a huge earthquake that affected the entire academics. However, Ji Wenjiang still wanted to intervene. This was not in line with the interests of the Southeast Group. But he was the supervisory minister of Zhongzhou State, and it was his duty. In this position, it was impossible for him to do things against his conscience. If he dared to tolerate this matter, it was tantamount to his contempt for his lifelong career. Not to mention that this matter happened in Liaodong. Even if it happened in the backyard of the Southeast Group, Ji Wenjiang would still take action in a high-profile manner. Ji Wenjiang withdrew his gaze from the window and took out his mobile phone. He thought about it, put down the mobile phone, picked up the red confidential phone on the table, and dialed a number. The phone rang twice and was quickly connected. "Uncle Ji, good morning." On the phone, Wang Xingxiao's clear and peaceful voice rang out. "Not very good." Ji Wenjiang smiled. "I didn't sleep last night, and I guess I can't rest today. I'm tired and old. My spirit can't keep up." "Uncle Ji, you're in the prime of your life. It's a good time for you to do your career." Wang Xingxiao smiled, and his voice was very sincere. "You boy." Ji Wenjiang laughed. "Do you know what I like most about you? That is, when you speak, even if it's a lie, your tone makes people feel comfortable. You're going to retire soon. You're in the prime of your life? That's in the past." Wang Xingxiao chuckled and said softly, "Uncle Ji is in Wuyue. How's the situation in Wuyue?" "I don't see any problems at the moment." Ji Wenjiang pondered for a moment. "Qinglei is quite cooperative. I told him that I wanted to deal with the Ministry of Supervision, and he didn't say much. He seemed very confident. That's because he knows that it's useless to say anything." Wang Xingxiao said lightly. The Ministry of Supervision itself maintained a certain uniqueness, and the internal personnel would often change. Ji Wenjiang wanted to change the head of the Ministry of Supervision in Wuyue, which was his power. Even if Wang Qinglei was the speaker, it was difficult for him to intervene in this matter. "Well, I'll settle things as soon as possible in the next 2 days. Time is very tight. It's best to have a new candidate in place as soon as possible. Who do you recommend?" Ji Wenjiang rubbed his eyebrows. "Uncle Ji, you can make the arrangements. I believe in your judgment." Wang Xingxiao's tone was relaxed. Ji Wenjiang smiled. He suddenly said, "About an hour ago, Hua Jingyang, the Vice Prime Minister, called me." His tone was calm and his words were very direct. Wang Xingxiao was silent for a moment. "Liaodong? Liaodong." Wang Xingxiao's voice was a little strange. What did Hua Jingyang say? What could he say? It's impossible for him to say anything. Ji Wenjiang laughed. As for the matter in Liaodong, in principle, he supports a thorough investigation, but he hopes that the Ministry of Supervision can pay attention to the impact and scope. What a load of high-sounding nonsense. Wang Xingxiao sneered. "It's not nonsense." Ji Wenjiang's tone was a little meaningful. Wang Xingxiao seemed to be thinking about something or recalling something. After a long while, he sighed softly. "When Hua Jingyang first became a director, my father said that with Hua Jingyang's talent, he could manage a place and serve as a governor, which could make the local weather favorable and the world peaceful. But it's a little difficult for him to stay in the core of the court. This person is too attached to the mountain and has a poor view of the overall situation. If he enters the cabinet, I'm afraid he will harm others and himself. In fact, all these years, if it weren't for Li Huaqing, I'm afraid that something would have happened to Hua Jingyang." Ji Wenjiang did not speak. Without evidence, he could not say anything. "Uncle Ji, how did you reply to him?" Wang Xingxiao asked with interest. "I didn't say anything," Ji Wenjiang said honestly. In fact, there was something wrong with Hua Jingyang's call. That was when he read the most critical part of the information, and he was already furious. After receiving Hua Jingyang's call and listening to his words, Ji Wenjiang really didn't want to talk to him and hung up the phone directly. In fact, if he had called an hour or two later, no matter how dissatisfied Ji Wenjiang was, he would at least pretend to be polite to him after calming down. He would not have ignored him at all. It was just a coincidence that as soon as he hung up the phone, Ji Wenjiang and Hua Jingyang almost completely fell out. Hua Jingyang might throw the phone away again. Ji Wenjiang was fearless. He was about to retire, and he had the Southeast Group behind him. Even if he retired, he was still one of the spiritual leaders of the Southeast group. At this time, he had no desire and was not afraid of anyone at all. Haha. Wang Xingxiao laughed unabashedly and said, "This is really like your character." Ji Wenjiang shook his head helplessly and did not speak. He looked elegant and usually had a gentle temperament. Chapter 12:27. Ji Wenjiang smiled and felt a little relieved. He really needed Wang Xingxiao's support. And he also knew that at this sensitive time, not everyone in the Southeast group wanted to pay for his sense of responsibility. He didn't sit in this position, so he didn't need to consider the things in this position. Ji Wenjiang's attack on Liaodong would naturally arouse different thoughts within the Southeast group, and then there would be different voices. This time was too sensitive. Li Tianlan and Li Huaqing were too sensitive. The conflict between the two sides was escalating. The Southeast group naturally wanted to sit on the sidelines and watch the tigers fight. It was only a matter of time before they entered the arena. But at this time, the storm in Liaodong was not a good time. Ji Wenjiang could predict the pressure brought by the voices within the Southeast group. Therefore, the support of Wang Xingxiao, the patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai, was extremely important. With his attitude, the voices within the group would have a new balance. What about Siyuan? Ji Wenjiang asked. Wen Siyuan preferred to play it safe now. The election was getting closer and closer, and Hua Xingyang was obviously a little anxious, so he kept making stupid moves. At this time, Wen Siyuan needed to play it safe, so he also hoped that the whole Southeast group could play it safe. The next big move of the Ministry of Supervision was obviously not what Wen Siyuan wanted to see. Wen Siyuan was the next leader of the Southeast group that Beihai had put forward. Ji Wenjiang had no way to ignore his opinion. It's okay. Wang Xingxiao whispered, on the issue of Uncle Wen, the attitude of the new group is very obvious, that is, support. This is a return. Then the report is too obvious this time. Ji Wenjiang laughed and joked. We're not doing nothing. Wang Xingxiao laughed. Uncle Wen means not to act rashly before figuring out Li Huaqing's trump card. Not acting rashly doesn't mean not doing anything. It's our duty to support Bai Qingqian on the Liaodong issue. It's also the obligation of the Wang family of Beihai to stabilize the economic situation of Zhongzhou state. Together, in the end. Wang Xingxiao couldn't help laughing a little louder. We still haven't done anything. But we've done a lot. Ji Wenjiang nodded. The so-called doing nothing referred to helping the new group on the Liaodong issue, but Beihai would also help the academics on the Flourishing Age Fund. In this way, he would help both sides once and suppress them once, which could be considered as canceling each other out. It might seem like they didn't do anything, but in fact, what they did was done. When the time was right, they would naturally get the expected returns. As for what the academy and the new corporation thought, it didn't matter at all. That was the deal. Between groups, balance was always the main theme. There was a limit to human relationships, and naturally, there was no problem that could not be resolved. Friends and enemies were constantly changing. When the situation was complicated to a certain extent, friends would become enemies, and enemies would become friends. Wang Xingxiao was very young, but now he had obviously begun to adapt to the role of patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. Everyone could see his progress and growth. In the past 2 years, under tremendous pressure, he had been constantly maturing. Now, in the face of chaos, he was obviously trying his best to stabilize and maintain the current situation of the Southeast group. Xingxiao, now we old guys can almost rest assured about you. Don't. Wang Xingxiao couldn't help laughing. Uncle Ji, you are not an old guy. Even if you are not in the parliament, you are still the flag of the Southeast. In your eyes, I am a real junior. In the future, we still need your means and experience to escort us. Ji Wenjiang had heard similar words countless times, but he still enjoyed listening to this kind of voice that made people feel comfortable and sincere. His tone was very relaxed. Anyway, as long as you have a plan in mind, Xingxiao. Wang Xingxiao said yes. Ji Wenjiang hung up the phone and picked up the materials in front of him again to read. Listening to the busy tone on the phone, Wang Xingxiao quietly put down the phone, thinking. Ji Wenjiang would not have thought that when he called Wang Xingxiao and even talked about Wen Siyuan, Wang Xingxiao was in Wen Siyuan's office. The office of the Speaker of Beihai was luxurious and spacious, with an office area of nearly 600 square meters. The interior was carved with dragons and phoenixes, and there was a huge fairy from outer space screen. Soft lights were sprinkled in every corner. Behind the mahogany desk, Wen Siyuan, who was dealing with documents overnight, looked up at Wang Xingxiao and said with a smile, "Wenjiang can't sit still anymore. He wants to move." Wang Xingxiao nodded. "Uncle Wen, you know Uncle Ji's character better than I do. When this kind of thing is exposed, Wenjiang can't help it. His sense of responsibility obviously exceeds his position." Wen Siyuan's tone was full of admiration. Ji Wenjiang, who looked gentle and elegant, was actually the real iron face of Zhongzhou State. His usual style was relatively mild, but at the critical moment, he would never show any favoritism. The whole Zhongzhou State knew this. Since he entered the supervisory department, from the deputy to the present director, many officials had been defeated by him. Many people in the 6 groups, including the Southeast group, had been defeated by Ji Wenjiang. He was resolute and ruthless. For Zhongzhou State and the Southeast group, this was a good thing. Wen Siyuan looked at the desk in front of him. At this time, facing him were the crossed flags of the Wang family of Beihai's firmament and sea and the star flag of Zhongzhou State. Deep and bright red intersected, quiet and solemn. Wen Siyuan nodded and said softly, "It's good to move. These years, some people have obviously been wrong. Achievements can't cover up mistakes. It's time to sound the alarm for some people. I'm afraid the matter in Liaodong is not small." Wang Xingxiao said with a smile. So far, in just over a week, a deputy speaker had been defeated. Regardless of what would happen later, the current situation was already a big deal for Zhongzhou State. Moreover, everyone knew that Zhao Yu would not be the end of this matter. "Liaodong. I'm afraid the academy can't be saved. It's hard." Wen Siyuan shook his head. Liaodong was the place where the academy started. It was also their most valued backyard and core. Its importance could not be overstated. It was like Beihai of the Southeast Group, Southwest of the Prince Group, and Zhongyuan of the Giant Group. Liaodong hid too many secrets of the academy. Perhaps the last thing they should do was to introduce Bai Qingxian to Liaodong in order to perfect their own promotion system. It seemed to be a good move at the beginning. But since Bai Qingxian was introduced, why did they deliberately provoke her? Now it could be said that the academics brought all this upon themselves. From Fengtian to Annong and then to the director's seat in Liaodong, it had only been less than 10 days, but the storm had already been fierce. If this matter was dug into, there might be counselors involved, and Hua Xingyang might even be in danger. Now it seemed that with Bai Qingxian's departure from Liaodong, Liaodong's status would inevitably rise in the future. It could be said that the academics' plan had succeeded. But the ridiculous thing was that although their plan had succeeded, it was difficult for Liaodong to belong to them. The academy had no chance to perfect their own promotion system. It was estimated that they had to wait for another 5 years. Fortunately, Li Huaqing was re-elected. If not, the academics would have been in question whether they could continue to exist under the joint pressure of several groups. If the matter in Liaodong has something to do with Hua Xingyang, even if it's just a little bit, it's a good thing for Uncle Wen, right? Wang Xingxiao said with a smile. Now was the time when the competition between Wen Siyuan and Hua Xingyang was the fiercest. If Hua Xingyang was affected by the storm in Liaodong, Wen Siyuan's chances of winning were almost 100%. So far, there were only 3 people who could compete for this position and were qualified to compete for this position. Wang Qinglei had a theoretical possibility, but in fact, the Prince Group had no confidence in pushing him to the position of Prime Minister. In this way, there were only Wen Siyuan and Hua Xingyang. If Hua Xingyang had a negative elimination system, Wen Siyuan would almost have no opponent at all. Therefore, he supported Ji Wenjiang to deal with Wu Yu. This would cause some different voices within the Southeast group, but these were all small problems. Every election was chaotic, and chaos led to chaos. All the major groups showed their own magic powers. It seemed to be a mess, but in fact, each group had its own strategic goals. The first strategic goal of the academy was naturally to ensure that Li Huaqing would be re-elected. Secondly, it was to let Hua Xingyang go further, from the first deputy position to the chief position. Then, it was to introduce a heavyweight province to perfect its own promotion system, so as to make full preparation for the post-Li Huaqing era. The strategic goal of the Prince Group was to choose a council-level assistant who could really help Guo Wentian share the pressure, and then stabilize its own internal affairs and look for opportunities. The strategic goal of the giant group was the Border Control Corps, which was also to protect the new group. The overall strategic goal of the new group was to stabilize several provinces and at the same time, occupy more say in the cabinet as much as possible, and provide official support for the development of Emperor Dong's palace in the next 5 years. The Southeast group naturally had its own strategic goals. The first step was to promote Wen Siyuan. And the second step was what Wang Xingxiao was secretly planning now. At least it's not a bad thing. Wen Siyuan said in a somewhat happy tone. Is there anyone in Longjiang province who is suitable to go to Liaodong? Wang Xingxiao suddenly asked. Longjiang was close to Liaodong and Beihai, and it was also the sphere of influence of the Southeast group. Of course, it was not as exaggerated as the back garden, but in Longjiang, the power of the Southeast group had a great advantage. If the academics could not protect Liaodong, Liaodong would inevitably become a battlefield for the major groups. If they could send people there first, they could at least occupy the position of deputy speaker. We won't intervene this time. Wen Siyuan shook his head with a smile. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Let's put the matter of Liaodong aside first. We have more important things to do. He looked at Wang Xingxiao with soft eyes. Wang Xingxiao nodded slowly. So, I should go to Tiannan now. Chapter 1228. In Li Tianlan's study, it was the first time that Li Tianlan had a video call with Bai Qingxian since the Liaodong incident broke out. Bai Qingxian was wearing a black suit and had a soft smile. The background of the video was the speaker's office in Liaodong. There were thick piles of documents on the desk. She was holding a pen in her hand, apparently reviewing the documents. Thank you for your hard work, Auntie. Li Tianlan nodded and said in a calm voice. You'll get used to it. Bai Qingxian smiled lightly. The majesty and ease of handling the matter was what made the council speechless. The storm in Liaodong was breaking out almost every minute and every second. Everyone was paying attention to Liaodong. The entire academics was now on tenterhooks. The storm exploded in Fengtian and swept across the entire Anong. Today, hundreds of related personnel in Liaodong had been invited by the Ministry of Supervision to drink tea and explain relevant issues in the designated places and at the designated time, including a deputy speaker and 6 council members of Anong. Things had developed to this point, but instead of subsiding, they were getting more and more intense. But under such circumstances, the most surprising thing was that, except for some personnel related to the incident itself, Liaodong was generally still calm. This kind of control made everyone really recognize Bai Qingxian's power and means. This incident that was likely to have a negative impact on her was constantly broken, but the still calm situation in Liaodong cleared all possible obstacles for her to enter the council. The environment in Tiannan is not very good. You just went there and you're not used to it, are you? When you are not busy these days, you can take Little White to Yuzhou province. If you don't like the house in the prince's mansion, there are other places you can choose. Bai Qingxian looked at Li Tianlan with a smile. Her eyes were soft and kind. She paused and continued with a smile, but it seems unnecessary. You should live in Hidden Dragon's Sea from now on. Actually, Xinyuan City is not bad now. Li Tianlan said softly. The overall environment in Tiannan was not very good, even barren. But with the continuous investment from the Flourishing Age Fund, Li Tianlan firmly believed that it would become one of the most beautiful provinces in Zhongzhou State. Yes, Xianyuan City is now the most luxurious city in Zhongzhou State. You are a rich man. Bai Qingqian blinked. Li Tianlan was a little embarrassed and avoided Bai Qingqian's gaze. No matter how they got along, most of the time, Li Tianlan would intentionally or unintentionally avoid contacting Bai Qingqian. He was afraid of her. It wasn't fear in his heart, but an indescribable feeling. It was hard for Li Tianlan to face the way Bai Qingqian looked at him. It was very gentle, very intimate, with a faint but absolutely deep guilt, and a touch of determination that she could not wait to give everything to him. This kind of feeling made Li Tianlan feel a sense of dependence and security from the soul. In front of Bai Qingqian, he seemed to become vulnerable easily. This was absolutely not allowed by Li Tianlan, but it was also something he could not stop. Therefore, every time Li Tianlan saw Bai Qingqian, he would be very happy, but at the same time, he would feel a sense of panic because he could not control his state. Li Tianlan shifted his gaze and said softly, "Auntie, how far will the problem in Liaodong develop?" "What are you referring to?" Bai Qingqian narrowed her eyes slightly. "Who will be involved in the highest position? Does it have anything to do with Hua Xingyang?" Li Tianlan asked directly. This might be the problem that quite a few people were worried about at the moment. Since the incident in Liaodong broke out, Hua Xingyang's attitude was obviously a little abnormal. Although he tried to pretend to be very calm on the surface, his attitude could not deceive people. He obviously paid too much attention to the problem in Liaodong. It would not be surprising for anyone to be involved in a group that involved hundreds of billions of dollars. If something went wrong with Hua Xingyang, what about Li Huaqing? The foundation of the entire academics would be completely torn apart. It's not certain yet. Bai Qingqian shook her head. But even if he is related, it won't be a big problem. Many people know about Prime Minister Hua. He does have some shortcomings. For example, he lacks the overall situation, but his personal ability and personal integrity are trustworthy. The word greed should have nothing to do with him and his family. Li Tianlan nodded slightly, thinking. What is certain is that the incident in Liaodong will involve a lot of people, and a considerable number of backbone figures in the academy will be more or less affected. This is a warning. If Li Huaqing wants to show his strength, he must be prepared to get hurt. Liaodong can't be saved. If he continues to struggle, there will definitely be more surprises waiting for him. Bai Qingqian smiled and said, "Do you really think that the two old masters in Yuzhou have given up?" The two old masters in Yuzhou. Bai Zhanfang and Zhou Mulan. Li Tianlan naturally did not dare to think that their silence meant depression. The two of them were bound to retire after this year's election. At this time, they were the most fearless. No one dared to offend them, and there was no one they didn't dare to offend. Whoever made them unhappy, they dared to directly take action. At this time, the silence of the two since the incident in Liaodong would obviously not be ignored by the outside world. Everyone was guessing that the two old brothers were accumulating strength. Once the academy made a new move, the two of them were very likely to make a fierce move that would surprise everyone. Li Tianlan suddenly felt that it was necessary for him to go to Yuzhou. He shook his head hard and continued, "Yang Xiao has something to do with this incident, right? He can't run away." Bai Qingqian's voice was full of confidence. Yang Xiao was her current partner in Liaodong and also the current governor of Liaodong. He was Hua Xingyang's confidant and capable general who had been promoted by Hua Xingyang. He was also an important figure who the academics had placed in Liaodong to keep Bai Qingqian in check. His personal ability was extremely strong. But then again, it was almost impossible for Andong's problem to be so serious without the protection of people at Yang Zhao's level. "Auntie, at the right time, you should move slowly." Li Tianlan deliberated over his words and said slowly. Bai Qingqian was a little surprised. It seemed that she did not expect Li Tianlan to be so cautious. She played with the pen in her hand and said softly, "What did you hear?" At this time, Hua Jingyang needs to be steady. Li Tianlan's voice was calm. "Of course, I'm not going to touch her. I'm not a narrow-minded woman." Bai Qingxian could not help but smile. The dispute between her and Hua Jingyang made the rumor that the second minister had smashed the phone spread all over the city. The two had completely fallen out. But Bai Qingxian really did not intend to use this matter to make Hua Jingyang uncomfortable. In fact, she was now trying to avoid Liao Dong's problem involving Hua Jingyang. He was Wen Siyuan's main competitor in Beihai. Things had developed to this point, and his own advantages had almost disappeared. This was the best situation. If something happened to Hua Jingyang and Wen Siyuan was no longer under pressure, the Southeast group was bound to extend its power to other aspects. The conflict with the new group was inevitable. It was in the best interests of the new group to keep a certain amount of pressure on Wen Siyuan and the new group while preventing Hua Jingyang from overwhelming Wen Siyuan at this point in time. Li Tianlan smiled bitterly and shook his head. There seems to be something wrong with things. Li Huaqing seems to have other plans. He thought for a moment and continued, "Hua Jingyang talked to Ji Wenzhang on the phone this morning, but the communication was very bad. Before we talked, Li Huaqing severely criticized Hua Jingyang. One sentence left a deep impression on me. At that time, his original words were, 'What are you panicking for? Liaodong can't be lost. What is ours. No one can take it away.'" Bai Qingxian was obviously stunned. She thought for a moment and said slowly, "Li Huaqing called Hua Jingyang? In front of you?" "Yes and no." Li Tianlan smiled. "He can't see me. But I can hear him." His sword energy had always permeated every corner of Emperor Dong's palace. This was not his spontaneous behavior, but something that happened naturally when his kendo reached a certain stage. As long as he wanted, all the sword energy within 10,000 meters was a part of his body, his eyes and ears. Li Tianlan could block out some things, but for the people he wanted to pay attention to, as long as they were within the range of his sword energy, his every move, even every breath and heartbeat, would be under his observation. Although Li Tianlan was not there when Li Huaqing called, his sword energy was there. This meant that Li Tianlan was standing closely beside Li Huaqing and even put his ear on the phone. From what we know at this stage, they can't protect Liaodong. Bai Qingxian said slowly. She frowned and said, "Why is Li Huaqing so confident? Or does he not see the situation clearly at all?" As soon as she said this, Bai Qingxian shook her head. Li Huaqing did not see the situation clearly. Anyone in Zhongzhou state could make this mistake now, but Li Huaqing would never do it. In this case, why was he so sure that the academy could protect Liaodong? In this situation, how could they protect Liaodong? Is it really impossible? Li Tianlan asked, "In any case, the academy can't protect Liaodong?" His voice was serious. In some cases, Li Tianlan's view of the overall situation was not mature enough. At the very least, he could not have a clear view of the situation of the entire Zhongzhou state. This was where he was working hard to learn. At times like this, he needed the political wisdom of the seniors more. Bai Qingxian was the current speaker of Liaodong. She was the most familiar with the situation in Liaodong. Her judgment was undoubtedly the most accurate. "No." Bai Qingxian shook her head and said with certainty. But when she said this, she suddenly fell into a trance. "No, really no? Was it really impossible?" Li Tianlan noticed her expression and raised his eyebrows slightly. "What's wrong?" Bai Qingxian was silent for a while, then took a deep breath and whispered, "There is a situation where they can protect Liaodong, but I ignored it." Her expression became a little strange. "What situation?" Li Tianlan asked. Bai Qingxian did not answer, but asked, "Li Huaqing is still in Xianyuan City. How is your talk these days?" Li Tianlan's mouth twitched and he whispered, "We haven't talked." They really hadn't talked. Except for the unforgettable meeting gift Li Tianlan gave him on the night when Li Huaqing came to Xianyuan City, the two had not seen each other or talked to each other these days. The storm in Liaodong was fierce. But Li Huaqing was too calm. He was so calm that it made people feel uneasy. I think we should find a chance to meet him. Bai Qingxian whispered, the only way I can think of for them to protect Liaodong is that we support the academics. This is the way I thought of, and it should be the only way. Chapter 12:29. Bai Qingxian's voice was a little absent-minded. When Li Tianlan heard the content of this sentence, he suddenly felt that it was extremely absurd. But this possibility did exist. This might be the only possibility. In the current situation, who could help the academy keep Liaodong? The Prince group couldn't. They were now in a mess internally and were powerless. Moreover, the incident in Liaodong was complicated and confusing. If they didn't see the truth clearly, they might get into trouble if they rashly intervened. The Prince group couldn't take action. The Southeast group was powerful, but in the face of Wang Qinglei, a big threat, and Wu Yu, who was more important to them than the academy in Liaodong, they wouldn't have time to pay attention to the academics. The Prince group wouldn't take action. Zhou Yinhai's attitude toward the North group had always been subtle. But even if they betrayed the good relationship with the current new group, their strength was not enough to change the outcome of this matter. Special Warfare Group, now the Special Warfare Group existed in name only and was basically a joke. The academics couldn't protect Liaodong at the moment. So no matter what, in any situation, the only way for the academy to protect Liaodong was to get Li Tianlan support. As the flag figure of the new group, Bai Qingxian was in charge of Liaodong and could get all the information. If Li Tianlan wanted to help Li Huaqing suppress the matter, he had a specific direction of operation and also powerful strength. As long as Li Tianlan didn't support it, no matter what the academy did, it couldn't protect Liaodong. What was this? Li Tianlan couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. Now he and Li Huaqing were at loggerheads, and the academy and the new group were at loggerheads. Li Huaqing actually thought that he would help him in the end. I'm afraid he's not a fool, Li Tianlan said subconsciously. Bai Qingxian was obviously stunned for a while, and then she laughed. Li Huaqing has been in Zhongzhou State for decades. I'm afraid you're the first person to say that about him. I know he's not stupid, Li Tianlan said lightly, but the problem is, he's not stupid. Why is he so confident? Now there's a rumor in Zhongzhou State. You should have heard it? Bai Qingxian suddenly asked. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. We all know very well that Li Huaqing is not someone who is good at taking risks. Bai Qingxian said softly, he has never been a strong president. This time, he suddenly went to Tiannan. It seemed aggressive, but in fact, under the current circumstances, only when he is in Emperor Dong's palace will there be enough space between us. Right now, the two of us are fighting, killing, displaying our strength. We want to make the other party compromise first. In fact, it's clear that you can't destroy Emperor Dong's palace, and Li Huaqing won't let you leave Zhongzhou State. That's the bottom line for all of us. With this bottom line, it's impossible for us to fight to the death. So, in the end, no matter how bad it is, even if the Flourishing Age Fund is greatly weakened, even if the academics have lost their foundation, we still have to talk. Li Huaqing definitely has a trump card when he goes to Xianyuan City. Right now, the rumors in the outside world are that Li Huaqing has prepared a trump card that can make you compromise 100% of the time. No matter what happens, as long as he shows his trump card, you will retreat. No one knows what that trump card is. Li Huaqing has never told anyone about it. Maybe apart from Li Huaqing, only you, the person involved, know something. Put yourself in his shoes and think about what Li Huaqing would give you to make you compromise without hesitation. Li Tianlan was silent. He thought of Qin Weibai immediately. He thought of Li Huaqing threatening him with Qin Weibai. Everyone had a weakness. Qin Weibai was his biggest weakness, a weakness that could make him put aside everything and ignore the overall situation. An incomparably piercingly cold murderous intent suddenly rose in his heart. Li Huaqing wanted to threaten him with Qin Weibai. How dare he? What are you thinking about? Bai Qingxian suddenly asked. Although the two of them were thousands of miles apart in video communication, she saw all the changes in Li Tianlan's expression in an instant. She wanted Li Tianlan to think about what could make him interested. But the expression he showed was not interest, but killing intent. Could it be Little Bai? Li Tianlan suddenly said. Threatening you with Little Bai? Bai Qingxian was stunned. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched slightly. What if it's true? Bai Qingxian asked meaningfully, if Little Bai falls into the hands of the academics, will you compromise? Do you think I will? Li Tianlan suddenly laughed. In everyone's impression, except for Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan had always been a person with little mood swings. He was not exactly dull, but most of the time, he was calm and restrained in his emotions. At least, Bai Qingxian had never seen Li Tianlan smiling at this moment. This was the kind of Li Tianlan that made people's scalp tingle at first sight. Bai Qingxian was silent. If they dare to kidnap Little Bai, it will be difficult for her to appear by my side in this life. The academic faction wouldn't dare to release her. Even if I compromised, they wouldn't dare to release her. They would only control her even more strictly. They would use her innocence, her life, and her reputation to threaten me. They would push their luck and make me the academic faction's dog. Everyone related to me will be the academic's dog, and even if I become a dog, in the end, Little Bai can't even come back. Li Tianlan laughed. So, under such circumstances, I will not compromise. His voice spread along the sword energy all over Emperor Dong's palace and fell into the ears of Bai Qingxian and Li Huaqing in the villa 1,000 meters away. I will only take revenge. I will bring Little Bai back by force, dead or alive. His voice suddenly became incomparably cold and hard, yet incomparably calm. 3 days. It will only take 3 days for me to travel all over Zhongzhou state. Apart from the minister and old Zhou, there are more than 20 counselors. Other than old Wu and old Bai, there are more than 200 governors, hundreds of deputy governors, hundreds of generals, and the heads of the wealthy clans. Ha! Ha! I can guarantee that within 3 days, these people, their families, friends, friends of friends, and anyone who is even remotely related to them will not be able to survive. I can give up Emperor Dong's palace and the Flourishing Age Fund. All these can be destroyed, and indeed can't stop the destructive power of Zhongzhou state. But they can't stop me. If this happens, I will let the whole Zhongzhou state die with Little Bai. The sword energy above Emperor Dong's palace roared like a dragon. Li Tianlan nodded to Bai Qingxian and whispered, I'll go and have a look. The communication was still maintained. Li Tianlan's figure disappeared instantly. When he appeared, Li Tianlan had already appeared outside the gate of Emperor Dong's palace thousands of meters away. The sword energy within 10,000 meters began to sweep the whole city as Li Tianlan moved. Li Tianlan's figure flickered, and the next second, he had come directly to the edge of Xianyuan city. The surging sword energy directly set off a gust of wind in Xianyuan city. Li Tianlan left Xianyuan city and entered Ningbian. His figure flashed unscrupulously with the expansion of the sword energy, covering thousands of meters with one step. The entire Tiannan Freedom Corps stationed at the border of Ningbian could feel the terrifying sword energy that covered the sky and covered the earth. Li Tianlan swept through the center of Ningbian city and directly entered Nanyuan of Zhongzhou state. Qin Weibai was already on her way back. Her private plane took off from Reki City and would land at Nanyuan International Airport, which was a temporary route that belonged to Qin Weibai. Everything was normal on the plane. Li Tianlan spoke to Qin Weibai on the phone before talking to Bai Qingxian. The plane's safe landing was inevitable. Even if the academics wanted to kidnap Qin Weibai, they couldn't shoot down the private plane. What they wanted was Qin Weibai alive, who could be used to threaten Li Tianlan. So if they wanted to take action, there was no chance before the plane took off. The only chance was when Qin Weibai got off the plane and took the helicopter to Xinyuan City. Li Tianlan would personally stay at Nanyuan International Airport and bring Qin Weibai back. The sky above Emperor Dong's palace was empty. In the villa, Li Huaqing sat quietly on the sofa. Li Tianlan's voice seemed to still echo in his ears, clear, cold, and calm. Li Huaqing couldn't help imagining that scene. If all the people Li Tianlan mentioned were dead, what would it mean for Zhongzhou State? In that case, the Southeast Group, the Academics, the Prince Group, the North Group, and the Special Warfare Group would all cease to exist. The only one left was the Giant Group. But the Giant Group obviously couldn't afford such a responsibility. Zhongzhou State collapsed in an instant. All kinds of systems were completely paralyzed, and the national power plummeted. It was surpassed by Star State, the European Alliance, and East Island. If such a situation really happened, there was no doubt that Li Tianlan would be the biggest sinner since the founding of Zhongzhou State. He would be notorious for thousands of years. But who cared about that? He could even give up Emperor Dong's palace. What else couldn't he do? Li Huaqing could completely feel Li Tianlan's bone-chilling madness. It was the desperation under extreme calmness, the determination to destroy the whole world. Li Huaqing shook his head slightly and smiled. This was indeed a so-called solution. Kidnapping Qin Weibai. But he wasn't stupid. How could he be so stupid? Li Tianlan had been wrong from the beginning. Li Huaqing did have a trump card, and he could guarantee that he could make Li Tianlan completely compromised the moment he took out that trump card. Li Tianlan couldn't think of what this trump card was. Maybe he couldn't think of it, but he didn't dare to think about it or believe it. The whole Zhongzhou State didn't dare to think about his real trump card. But such a trump card was a benefit, a gift, absolutely not a threat. Li Huaqing picked up the teacup and drank some water. His whole body was completely relaxed and leaned against the sofa. He didn't take Li Tianlan's warning to heart at all. He breathed a sigh of relief and muttered to himself, "What a mess." Chapter 12:30. When the silver private plane, which reflected the airport lights, slowly stopped at Nanyuan Airport, Li Tianlan's figure also appeared in the airport. With his current status, if he said a few words, he could make all the order in the airport stop. Planes could not take off, passengers who landed were not allowed to get off, the CEO would personally accompany him, the most professional ground crew would put on a grand welcome ceremony, and all sorts of other messy things would not be a problem. However, Li Tianlan did not alarm anyone. The moment he arrived, the sword energy had covered the entire airport. When the door of the private plane opened and the gangway fell, Li Tianlan appeared under the gangway. The first to come out were 4 female soldiers of the Snowdance Corps, who had escorted Qin Weibai back from Reki City. There were not many of them, but the lineup of 1 at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm and 3 in the fire-flaming realm could not be regarded as insignificant. The first time the 4 came out, they saw Li Tianlan standing outside. They looked a little excited and even a little fanatical, but then they forcibly suppressed it and bowed slightly to Li Tianlan. The Snowdance Corps. From the day they were transferred from the Thunderbolt Battalion to the Snowdance Corps, they knew that they belonged to Li Tianlan. In the chaos of Snow Country, Li Tianlan and the Snowdance Corps soared to the sky at the same time and completely established their positions. After the chaos of Snow Country ended, although the Snowdance Corps still stayed in Reki City, Li Tianlan had never given up this power. He had not been to the European continent after that, but through the power of Dongqing Wudi, he had been giving the Snowdance Corps the greatest care. After the establishment of Emperor Dong's palace, the Flourishing Age Fund was merged into Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianying, Fireman, and others joined the Snowdance Corps. These were all manifestations of Li Tianlan's influence in the Snowdance Corps. After the Flourishing Age Fund joined Emperor Dong's palace, Li Tianlan personally signed the first large-scale fund transfer, which was as high as 30 billion Zhongzhou dollars, and it was used on the Snowdance Corps. This money would build a new training ground, new dormitories, improve their living standards, and new meals for the Snowdance Corps. Emperor Dong's palace also had a second plan to allocate funds to the Snowdance Corps. It was said that it would use the channels of the Dark Knights to upgrade their armaments in all aspects from the European alliance and make up for some of their current shortcomings in armaments. Li Tianlan's shadow really existed in the Snowdance Corps. Even if Li Tianlan had not appeared in front of them for more than 2 years, a series of actions clearly showed that they were people of Emperor Dong's palace. The Snowdance Corps was also a super corps of Emperor Dong's palace. They were sacrificing their lives for the strongest expert of this era. Now that they suddenly saw Li Tianlan standing outside the plane, their excitement could be imagined. Li Tianlan nodded to them. The next second, his eyes involuntarily fell on Qin Weibai, who walked out of the cabin. Tight jeans, thin white sweater, exquisite high heels. Dressed simply, Qin Weibai had an indescribable purity and beauty. There was a touch of surprise and joy on her perfect and dreamy face. Obviously, she did not expect Li Tianlan to come here. Her high heels stepped lightly on the carpet on the gangway and she quickened her pace to Li Tianlan's side. The corners of Li Tianlan's mouth moved, and he smiled. Qin Weibai stood in front of him and tilted her head slightly. She smiled softly and said, "You miss me so much? It's only 40 minutes from here to Emperor Dong's palace. Can't wait?" Li Tianlan's smile grew bigger and bigger. Qin Weibai seemed to realize that her words were inappropriate. She blushed slightly and punched Li Tianlan lightly. "Don't be serious. I'm a serious person. I'm not as horny as you think." Li Tianlan held Qin Weibai's hand casually and said with a smile, "I understand." Qin Weibai squinted and smiled, with hidden meaning. "I've long heard that the woman in East Island is carrying a bag and living with you. How could my majesty be horny? I'm afraid you've long been immersed in someone else's tenderness. Your majesty, I can't thank you enough for remembering to pick me up. Where did you learn to be so sarcastic?" Li Tianlan felt a headache coming on. "Humph, it's my nature." Qin Weibai clenched her small fist and raised it. "Tell me honestly, did you make any mistakes?" "Of course not." Li Tianlan laughed and pulled Qin Weibai into his arms. He lowered his head and gently bit her delicate ear. "I've eaten delicacies. How can I still eat porridge and side dishes? My appetite has been spoiled by you." Qin Weibai's body was a little weak. Her ear could definitely be regarded as her weakness. Every time Li Tianlan gently bit her ear, this goddess, who was high and mighty in the eyes of outsiders, would become like a well-behaved cat. "Haven't you ever thought of changing your taste occasionally?" Qin Weibai's big eyes were a little blurred, and she muttered to herself. "You're delicacies, but you're also porridge and side dishes. You can satisfy all my tastes." Li Tianlan touched Qin Weibai's soft long hair. "You're glib." Qin Weibai glared at Li Tianlan, then smiled, put her arms around his neck, and kissed him on the face. "For the sake of your honesty, I'll give you a reward." Li Tianlan smiled and looked at the 4 female soldiers of the Snowdance Corps, who also walked down the gangway but hesitated and didn't know whether they should come over or not. He waved to them. The 4 female soldiers were stunned. They looked at each other, and then their faces turned red. They trotted over and gave Li Tianlan a standard Zhongzhou state military salute. "Your Majesty." The voices of the 4 rose and fell at the same time, in unison. "You've worked hard." Li Tianlan smiled. "How is everyone in Reki City?" "Your Majesty, the Corps is very good. Reki City is very cooperative with us, and the Corps commander also takes good care of us." Among the 4 female soldiers, the middle-aged woman who was the leader said softly. Her appearance was not beautiful, and her figure was not exaggerated. However, she was dressed in the special military uniform of the Snowdance Corps. She stood straight and had her own temperament that could not be ignored. Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. The female soldier waited quietly for a few seconds. Seeing that Li Tianlan did not continue, she whispered, "Your Majesty, if there's nothing else, we'll go back. We were going to escort Madame to Emperor Dong's palace, but your Majesty has come in person." She smiled softly and did not continue. "Company Commander Red Lotus, you should also go back to Emperor Dong's palace. You go first. I'll walk around with Little Bai," Li Tianlan said with a calm smile. The woman named Red Lotus was obviously stunned for a moment. She did not hear Li Tianlan's words clearly, but she heard the first few words. Her voice was a little trembling. "Your Majesty, do you remember my name? You're famous. How dare I forget?" Li Tianlan's voice became a little happy. The predecessor of the Snowdance Corps was the Thunderbolt Battalion. What did the Thunderbolt Battalion mean? Powerful, crazy, invincible, and invincible. There was no need to use too many adjectives. It was a simple sentence. The Thunderbolt Battalion was the strongest army in the world. There were very few women in such an iron army. In other words, the women who could successfully enter the Thunderbolt Battalion through layers of selection were not ordinary, and they were even more resilient than men. There were less than 100 women in the Snowdance Corps, and they formed a company of their own. Red Lotus, an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, was the company commander and also served as the senior staff officer of the Snowdance Corps. She was 42 years old and a colonel. It could be said that she was a strong person who could not be ignored in the Snowdance Corps. Well, Reki City is generally calm, and the Aurora Legion will not make any big moves in a short time. The Snowdance Corps and Emperor Dong's palace are a family. In the near future, I will consider sending some people to Emperor Dong's palace. Little Bai is also short of people. Company Commander Red Lotus can be Little Bai's close guard. The three of you can join the Nightmare Corps. Li Tianlan paused and continued, "Of course, this is not a mandatory order. If you don't want to come, you can continue to go back to the Snowdance Corps." Red Lotus looked back at her three subordinates. The three of them were trembling with excitement, and their faces were red. But because of their iron discipline, they did not speak. Red Lotus laughed heartily and said with a heroic spirit, "Of course we want to. Reki City is still too boring. If we can come to Emperor Dong's palace, we can't ask for more." She looked at Qin Weibai and bowed slightly. "Madam, please take care of me in the future." From a colonel to a bodyguard, it seemed that she had plummeted, but in fact, she had soared to the sky. To be a bodyguard, it depended on whose bodyguard she was. If she could become Qin Weibai's close guard, not to mention anything else, just in terms of her personal future, Red Lotus's future could be said to be broad. At least one thing was certain. With this identity, the person who she had to salute when she met before now had to lower his head and talk to her when he saw her. Qin Weibai smiled and squeezed Red Lotus's shoulder. She did not say much. In front of Li Tianlan, she had never shown any sharpness. "Well, you take the helicopter back to Emperor Dong's palace. We'll talk after you settle down." Li Tianlan waved his hand and watched the female soldiers leave with a calm expression. These were all people he could completely trust. "Aren't we going back with them?" Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan with some confusion. "What bad idea do you have?" "You said it's a bad idea, so it can't be much better," Li Tianlan said casually. Qin Weibai snorted softly. "By the way, where's Xian Yan?" Li Tianlan suddenly asked. "She got on the plane in Reki City and went to Huading to find military counselor. I hope she can learn more from military counselor during this time," Qin Weibai said softly. Li Tianlan said yes and did not say anything more. "Anyway, we're not in a hurry to go back now. Let's go shopping." Qin Weibai took Li Tianlan's arm excitedly. "It seems that you haven't gone shopping with me yet. I want to buy a few pairs of shoes and a few sets of clothes." "Well, and," Li Tianlan looked around and said helplessly, "this is the airport. There are also large shopping malls in the airport. Pig, what era are we in? Let's go. Help me choose a few pairs of shoes and put them on the plane. It's convenient to change." Qin Weibai giggled and pulled Li Tianlan out. Li Tianlan subconsciously looked back at the silver private plane parked in place. The private plane belonged to the Samsara Palace, so it was now the property of Emperor Dong's palace. Qin Weibai had been flying around the world in it over the years. Qin Weibai specially changed a cloakroom inside the plane, in which there were about 100 pairs of shoes, bags, and clothes of different styles. The total value was probably enough to buy a luxury apartment in the center of Yuzhou. Qin Weibai once said that she would find a chance to play with Li Tianlan on the plane and let him experience the temptation of a uniform. Unfortunately, there had been no chance. This was something that Li Tianlan had always felt a little regretful about. Then let's go shopping. Li Tianlan laughed. By the way, I'll fish and see if anyone is stupid enough to take the bait. Chapter 1231. Fishing. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan in confusion. What do you mean? It's a sensitive period. I want to see if anyone is stupid enough to attack you. If there is such a person, Li Tianlan's eyes flashed. He was already by Qin Weibai's side, so it was impossible for anything to happen to her. But if someone really wanted to attack Qin Weibai, whether they succeeded or not, Li Tianlan would make them pay an absolutely terrible price. Well, I thought you really came to pick me up because you missed me. It turns out that you plan to use me as a bait? Am I bait? Qin Weibai reached out and pulled Li Tianlan's face, pulling his calm face into a slightly weird expression. If it weren't for this, would you still be waiting for me to come to you in Emperor Dong's palace? I'm worried about your safety. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai with soft eyes. Because his face was pulled by those small hands, his voice was a little distorted. Qin Weibai gently wrinkled her nose. She didn't realize how cute this little gesture was. In Li Tianlan's heart, it was cute enough to make the whole Zhongzhou state fall. He was often fascinated by some of her inadvertent little gestures. Don't worry. Qin Weibai smiled sweetly. At times like this, no one dares to attack me. Including the academics? Li Tianlan slightly raised his eyebrows. The academics do have a trump card. To be exact, Li Huaqing has a trump card. But his trump card can't be to kidnap me. How could Li Huaqing be so stupid as to be able to stay in this position? If he had to choose this method to completely irritate you, he wouldn't be in Emperor Dong's palace now. Qin Weibai whispered with a smile. In fact, there was one more thing she didn't say. She knew Li Huaqing's trump card, so she never really worried about the academics. The academics were now fighting tit for tat with Emperor Dong's palace. Both sides were in chaos, and the loss of the Flourishing Age Fund was even more shocking. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Because as long as Li Huaqing's trump card was revealed, Emperor Dong's palace would indeed compromise. At that time, everything they lost would be made up 10 times, 100 times, or even thousands of times. That trump card was interests, the future, the dynasty, not a threat. In fact, the most likely to attack him now was not the academics, but other people who wanted to take advantage of the chaos. They were in the best position to make a move. But Qin Weibai knew very well that they had a standpoint, but they had no candidate. Jiang Shangyu was seriously injured, Li Guangtu was captured, and Lin Fengting was one of them. Li Tianlan was her man. Apart from these four, there were no other candidates. It was true that Qin Weibai did not know martial arts, but it did not mean that she did not have the ability to protect herself. Now, she slept very well. In the deepest sleep, she could dream of the boundless starry sky every night. Everything became reality in her imagination. She was still looking for the tree in her dream, the faint, transparent Li Tianlan who seemed to disappear at any time under the tree. In her dream, she imagined hundreds of trillions of interstellar fleets searching non-stop. In the real world, her progress in the spiritual domain was extremely fast. Now Qin Weibai was very close to the transcendent realm in the spiritual field. What did this mean? When the spiritual domain reached this level, it could easily hypnotize an invincible realm expert and have a strong impact on an expert at the peak of the invincible realm. In this state, if Qin Weibai went further, she would have reached the point where she could try to crown Li Tianlan's spirit. Now, even in the face of an expert at the peak of the invincible realm, she had enough ability to protect herself. For the time being, she could not easily affect an expert who surpassed the peak of the invincible realm. An expert who could surpass the peak of the invincible realm, but how many such experts were there in the dark world? At this time, they would either be seriously injured or not hurt her, so Qin Weibai flew around unscrupulously. Jiang Shangyu obviously understood this, so even if he had the right to make a move, he did not have the ability. At the same time, he would restrain his allies from seeking their own deaths. So now Qin Weibai was very safe. Very, very safe. Do you know Li Huaqing's trump card? Li Tianlan put his arms around Qin Weibai's slender waist, and their figures flashed. The next second, they had arrived at the gate of the airport shopping center. The shopping center of Nanyang International Airport was a large shopping mall. All kinds of first-line international brands had counters here. Qin Weibai walked in with Li Tianlan and said with a smile, "I can roughly guess. Li Huaqing is a gentle person, but he is very courageous. This kind of person can usually control the overall situation and be stable. But in his bones, he also has a very crazy passion and the courage to take a big gamble. Although our relationship is not harmonious now, I still have to say that he is very optimistic about you and values you very much. Of course, this is not just his personal feelings for you. He does this just for Zhongzhou State. He protects Gu Xingyun and Li Guangtu. In the future, he will even support Jiang Shangyu. If possible, he will also extend an olive branch to the Wang family of Beihai. But all this is not for them or for himself, but to set up an opponent for you. He hopes that you can mature quickly, that you can understand what the overall situation is, and that you can understand the necessity of concession and compromise. Only in this way can he gamble with you." "Gamble on what?" Li Tianlan was a little curious. "I can't say." Qin Weibai blinked her eyes and walked into a counter. Li Tianlan didn't recognize the brand and didn't pay attention to it. The two young shopping guides were full of enthusiasm. They had seen a lot of pot-bellied and young and beautiful couples, and they had also seen a lot of proud and indifferent strong women who were alone. However, it was indeed rare to see a young man and woman who were naturally close to each other, and a girl like Qin Weibai was even more rare. "I can't say it now." Qin Weibai sat and tried on a pair of high heels. Her white and delicate feet were exquisite and beautiful, shining like jade in the light. When they were the most intimate, Li Tianlan liked to play with and bite this pair of peerless shoes. Li Tianlan looked at them and felt a little thirsty, and he was also in a trance. Different from Qin Weibai's shyness and Dongqing Rushi's eccentricity, there used to be a girl with a pair of exquisite little feet who would give him everything he liked with a smile and let him enjoy them wantonly. But in the end, she still disappeared from his life. He hadn't seen her for almost 3 years. He sat on the sofa and was lost in thought. Qin Weibai's voice continued, "I'm just guessing now. What if I'm wrong and you laugh at me? I want to see him when I go back. He's an old fox who thinks he's the winner now. I want to know if he can still be so arrogant if I expose his trump card." She stretched out a small foot in a brand new silver high heel. There were silver shining spots on the high heel, which made the small foot look more white and attractive. "Do I look good?" "Yes." Li Tianlan quickly came to his senses and said with a smile. Qin Weibai glanced at him and looked a little suspicious, but she didn't say anything. She just chuckled and said, "Wrap it up." Then, she picked up another pair. Li Tianlan sat on the side and watched quietly. The natural fragrance from Qin Weibai drifted over and filled the exquisite counter, as if it was nourishing his soul. High heels, jeans, a long skirt, a suit, and a subtle fragrance floated in the air. Qin Weibai's voice and smile were soft and light, but they were beautiful. She obviously didn't have the concept of saving. As long as Li Tianlan thought it looked good, she would wrap it all up. This was the airport's shopping center. After buying them, there would naturally be someone to send them to the private plane, so Li Tianlan didn't have to carry the bags. Qin Weibai was dressed in different styles. A woman's desire to shop was something that even a goddess could not avoid. Upstairs and downstairs, Li Tianlan accompanied Qin Weibai for a casual stroll. In his hand was a bank card with an astronomical balance. Li Tianlan hardly used it on normal days. He only knew that the money in it was basically inexhaustible. As he casually swiped the card and looked at the clear and elegant smile of his sweetheart beside him, Li Tianlan felt like a rich man. It was a feeling he had never experienced before. For him, who had almost endless physical strength, shopping naturally did not feel tired. On the contrary, he felt that the experience was very good. Li Tianlan began to miss Qin Weibai's cloakroom on the private plane immensely. There were all kinds of clothes and shoes in there, as well as a comfortable and soft bed. It was a pity that he rarely took the private plane with Qin Weibai. Occasionally, there were other people beside them. It seemed that he could only enjoy it when he had the chance to take Qin Weibai out alone. Li Tianlan gently raised the corner of his mouth. Qin Weibai, who was choosing silk stockings, looked at his smile and said softly, "What bad idea are you thinking?" 1,000 miles in a day, Li Tianlan laughed. Qin Weibai's face was slightly red. Obviously, she thought of some promises she had made with Li Tianlan. She rolled her eyes at him and whispered, "Dirty. Carrying on the family line is a matter of course." Li Tianlan laughed. "I'm still waiting for you to give birth to a son for me. Before I went to East Island, you said that if I came back alive, I would be rewarded and that you would give birth to a child for me. After so many years, well." Li Tianlan's somewhat joking expression paused slightly, and he was a little confused. "Did you take any safety measures?" Li Tianlan was sure that he wasn't so bored. "No." Qin Weibai blushed and looked at the silk stockings in front of her. She didn't wear silk stockings often, but she used them a lot when she was with Li Tianlan. These things were basically one-time consumables in Li Tianlan's hands. They were white, black, and flesh-colored. Qin Weibai planned to pack them all back. "That's strange," Li Tianlan murmured. "Don't worry." Qin Weibai smiled. "You're very healthy, and so am I, of course." She knew why she hadn't been pregnant. It might be incredible, but in fact, if she were pregnant, the master of Samsara Palace would definitely be pregnant at the same time. This kind of thing went beyond physiological factors. No matter how you looked at it, although they could exist at the same time, they were indeed one person. Now the master of Samsara Palace was hovering on the edge of life and death. Naturally, Qin Weibai had no possibility of giving Li Tianlan a child. "Yes." Li Tianlan nodded and said thoughtfully, "It seems that I need to work harder." Qin Weibai giggled. "Then you have to perform well tonight." Li Tianlan hugged her from behind, lowered his head, and bit her ear. He said in a hoarse voice, "Let's go back together later. We don't need a helicopter. How about we try outside tonight?" "Outside? To get a room?" Qin Weibai asked. Li Tianlan laughed in a low voice. "When I came here, I saw a forest was not bad." Qin Weibai finally understood what he meant outside. She blushed and said, "Tianlan, you're getting worse." Li Tianlan's hand tightened around her, and he smiled without saying a word. The shopping guide walked over quickly with a smile on her face, and her eyes were respectful. Before she got close, Qin Weibai gently broke away from Li Tianlan's arms, and whispered with a red face, "Find a place." He pointed to a coffee table in another direction. "If Secretary Han feels bored, we can go over there and have some tea while we wait." Han Xinyan frowned slightly and glanced at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai nodded. Han Xinyan nodded, turned around, and walked over. Ma Si instinctively wanted to follow, but Qin Weibai smiled and said, "Mommy, what's wrong with your head?" Ma Si was stunned. He subconsciously touched the wound on his head and increased the strength of his hand. It hurt so much that he trembled slightly. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's okay. I accidentally fell down. It's a little embarrassing." "On the helicopter? Is it related to Tianlan?" Qin Weibai asked with a smile. As soon as Li Huaqing arrived at Emperor Dong's palace, Li Tianlan gave him a show of strength. That night, sword energy surged over Emperor Dong's palace, and a helicopter was directly pulled into Emperor Dong's palace by Li Tianlan. The wreckage of the helicopter was scattered everywhere. Li Huaqing was not injured because of the safety belt, but Ma Si was a little tragic. He was bleeding from his head and had a concussion. He returned to Li Huaqing yesterday. "It's not His Majesty's fault. I was really careless." Ma Si hesitated and said softly, "His Majesty is angry. I can completely understand it, and so can the President. If my injury can eliminate His Majesty's resentment, it's a good thing. I'm willing to do it. Your Highness may not know, but I can be sure that the President values His Majesty very much." Qin Weibai took a deep look at him and said softly, "Mommy is really a smart man." Ma Si shook his head with a wry smile and did not speak. He was Li Huaqing's secretary, which meant too many things. Besides, he was Li Huaqing's old secretary. He had been with Li Huaqing since he first became a council member and was not the president. It had been 15 years now. It was extremely rare that he did not change his secretary for such a long time. It was enough to see that Li Huaqing used Ma Si very well. At least in Li Huaqing's heart, Ma Si was definitely one of the most trustworthy people. He was his confidant. Li Huaqing knew Ma Si very well. Ma Si naturally knew Li Huaqing well enough. Now the outside world and even the entire academics were guessing what Li Huaqing's trump card was when facing Emperor Dong's palace. There were all kinds of guesses, but no one was really sure. Qin Weibai could vaguely guess something based on the story of the master of Samsara Palace and the current situation, but she was not sure. And Ma Si also had a guess, which was based on her understanding of Li Huaqing. Although that guess was a little unbelievable, combined with Li Huaqing, who was now calmly watching the confrontation of Zhongzhou State with a smile, this guess seemed to be the only explanation. Qin Weibai was a smart woman, and even smart could not be used to describe her. She was a very intelligent woman. Therefore, whether it was to ease the relationship between Li Huaqing and Li Tianlan, for the academics, or for his own future, he had to say these words. These words seemed to be nothing, but the hint was enough. Combined with the hint of Ma Si's words, Qin Weibai collected another clue. The seemingly absurd guess in his heart could basically be confirmed. Her eyes became more and more peaceful, and she said softly and slowly, "Tianlan's temper is not very good. Sometimes, when he is angry, he even scolds me. But he is a person who is angry, but he doesn't bear grudges. His temper comes and goes quickly. When this thing is over, when he thinks of you, Mommy, Tianlan will definitely feel embarrassed. Mommy, with this wound of yours today, Tianlan will definitely give you a satisfactory explanation later." Ma Si's eyes suddenly lit up for a moment, and he was ecstatic. Qin Weibai understood his hint and gave a good response. "I know His Majesty's temper." Ma Si chuckled and touched the wound on her head again. "As long as Your Majesty can calm down, no matter how serious the injury is, I will be fine. It's worth it to me." He looked at Qin Weibai and couldn't help but make a joke. Her Highness is an outstanding beauty. His Majesty is actually willing to scold Her Highness. It's really unexpected. Qin Weibai chuckled. Her eyes flickered. She did not speak, but the temperature of her face was gradually rising. Of course, Li Tianlan scolded her not when he was angry, but when they were at their most intimate. Li Tianlan had never regarded her as a goddess in bed. That bad guy liked to humiliate her, call her those embarrassing names, and liked her begging him to call her master. Qin Weibai did not resent all this. No matter what, she was still a woman. She was high and mighty outside. It would be too tiring for her to be respected by her husband as a goddess at home. So, even though Li Tianlan's demands were a little overbearing and even a little obscene, Qin Weibai was still willing to cooperate and please him despite her shyness. She could truly feel that she was his woman. The feeling of being used, possessed, and conquered made her feel extremely at ease. Qin Weibai shook her head. Ma Si also seemed to feel that her joke was a little inappropriate. She smiled awkwardly, pointed to Han Xinyan on the other side, and said respectfully, "Your Highness, I'll go over first." "Okay." Qin Weibai nodded and looked at Li Huaqing in front of her, who had his back to her. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. She slowly walked over and sat down on the sofa opposite him. Li Huaqing looked up at her, smiled, and personally poured a cup of tea for her. "The top Maojian tea tastes good. Tianlan is in a bad mood and doesn't want to talk to me. But although it's a little cold here these days, the hospitality is quite good. Even I don't often drink this kind of tea." The tea fragrance spread slightly with the infusion of the tea, and the taste was clear and moist. Maojian tea was produced in Zhongyuan province. There had always been a saying in Zhongzhou state that the top Maojian tea and the top Longjing tea were not often drunk even by the directors. The former had mostly become the private collection of the Dongqing clan, while the latter was the treasure of the Wang family of Beihai. But now, with the return of Jiangzhe to the Li family, the top Longjing tea of Beihai was probably less and less. Qin Weibai reached out her hand and played with the delicate teacup with her white fingers. She said softly, "Tianlan has more than just emotions. Are you still dissatisfied? You even want to kill me?" Li Huaqing smiled and said, "Did he leave Emperor Dong's palace last night to pick you up? I heard what he said before he left. Young man, your murderous intent is still too strong. In fact, in many cases, killing may not necessarily solve all problems, and killing is not the only way to solve problems. We are all young. Young people should have the mentality and fighting desire of young people." Qin Weibai laughed softly and said, "Now in Emperor Dong's palace, there are already people who have the strength to support Tianlan's youthful frivolity." Li Huaqing frowned, and his eyes were obscure. "That's what worries me the most." Qin Weibai said, in confusion, but her eyes were extremely calm. Emperor Dong's palace is too powerful and involves too many people. Tianlan controls Emperor Dong's palace. He has the strength, but his mind is not mature enough. It's not a bad thing. Li Huaqing sighed and said, "Tianlan is indeed strong. I also believe that he is really invincible in the world now. But no matter how invincible he is, there is a limit. Now it is obviously impossible for him to defeat the whole world alone. He once said that he is the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, and I can agree with this sentence. But so what? He is strong in Zhongzhou state, but what about internationally? Does he have to be strong all the time? Offend Star State? Offend the European alliance and all countries? The game between countries has always existed. If you are too strong, you will be easily broken. If you don't know how to give in, for Zhongzhou state, such invincibility will not bring prosperity, but chaos and disaster." Qin Weibai's eyes sparkled. At this moment, she was completely sure of Li Huaqing's trump card. "So," Qin Weibai's voice was very soft. "Now you need to establish a strong enough enemy for Tianlan, or even more than one. Such an enemy needs to be strong enough and difficult enough to deal with. Jiang Shangyu and Gu Xingyun are both in Zhongzhou state. From the standpoint of Zhongzhou state, Tianlan and they are on the same side, which is the most difficult thing to deal with. At least, Tianlan can't directly kill them like he does to enemies. Li Guangtu is more difficult to deal with. If Zhongzhou state lets him come back, his identity will be the same as Gu Xingyun's. Similarly, because of Li Guangtu's identity and the purgatory of heaven capital behind him, it will be more difficult for Tianlan to deal with him. So Tianlan will think that you are deliberately making things difficult for him, targeting him, and making things difficult for him. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, I am making things difficult for him. Young people are too arrogant. Of course, we old guys don't like him. If that's the case, then you won't be in Emperor Dong's palace. Qin Weibai also laughed. This is not making things difficult. From my point of view, this is a test, right? Li Huaqing's smile froze. You gave Tianlan a test, a difficult problem. Gu Xingyun, Jiang Shangyu, and Li Guangtu are all the stumbling blocks you put on Tianlan's path, but at the same time, they are also the ladder you built for Tianlan to climb to the sky. Killing can't solve all problems, so you've confined his enemies to an environment where they can't be killed, at least they can't run over blatantly. If Tianlan wants to kill them, he needs more flexible means and methods. He will fight, suppress the enemy, set up traps, calculate, retreat, compromise, or endure when the opportunity arises. He will understand the situation in front of him better and understand what he should do. These are all things you think he should learn. Qin Weibai said softly, you want him to grow up quickly, to grow into a real invincible realm warrior, and also to grow into a mature person. A leader of great talent and bold vision. Her soft voice paused, and then she smiled like a flower. Because only in this way can you trust him with the whole Zhongzhou state and even the future of the academics. Am I right? Chapter 1233. Crack, with a slight sound, crack suddenly appeared on the teacup in Li Huaqing's hand. The crack spread along the celadon teacup, from top to bottom. The whole teacup was full of cracks. The tea was swaying in the teacup, creating ripples one after another. Li Huaqing looked down at the teacup in his hand and said nothing. Qin Weibai's smile froze. Her pupils contracted, and she stared at the teacup full of cracks. The depths of her eyes were full of unconcealable shock. The celadon teacup was not strong. When it was full of tea, there were many people who could crush the teacup. Any expert in the fire-flaming realm could do that. But in absolute shock, the teacup was accidentally cracked in the shock, but the tea did not spill at all. It was not difficult to achieve this kind of power. But what kind of person could have such a precise grasp of power? Qin Weibai stared at Li Huaqing in a daze. For the first time, there was a touch of full vigilance in her eyes. Li Huaqing, the president of Zhongzhou State, did not understand martial arts. The whole world knew that. Li Huaqing lowered his head and kept holding the teacup, which looked a little weird. Because he lowered his head, Qin Weibai could not see his eyes. Because another secret was exposed because the trump card in his heart was revealed. This was the first time Li Huaqing had experienced this feeling. Perhaps only Qin Weibai could do this. Sharp, direct, precise, abrupt. Just when he thought that Qin Weibai was testing him, and just when he thought that Qin Weibai might make some demands, this woman, whom Li Huaqing had never underestimated, directly revealed his trump card. Give Zhongzhou State to Li Tianlan. That was his plan. It sounded inconceivable, absurd, and fantastical. But as long as he did it, no one dared to say that there was no chance of success. Zhongzhou State did not have a president from the dark world. But Snow Country once had a leader who was a secret agent. His existence was not for nothing. During his term, Snow Country might not have changed much. But because of his existence, Snow Country, which had been on the edge of the cliff at that time, was pushed back to a stable position. Because of this, there was the situation of Snow Country today. Similarly, Li Huaqing could also hand over the future of Zhongzhou State to Li Tianlan. This kind of handover was not a symbolic handover. Instead, he truly handed over Zhongzhou State to Li Tianlan without reservation. What does this mean? In other words, Li Huaqing would be re-elected in this election. 5 years later, it was still hard to say who would be in Li Huaqing's position. It was unlikely that it would be Li Huaqing. It could be Wang Qinglei, Wen Xiyuan, or someone else. The possibility of the academics, the new group, and the giant group was not high. It could even be said to be very small. The president after Li Huaqing was most likely from the Southeast Group or the Prince Group. 10 years after the new president took office, which was 15 years from now, Zhou Yuanshan, who was about to take control of Nanyue province, was already unstoppable. Zhou Yuanshan was also the focus of the new group and the giant group. 15 years later in Zhongzhou State, Dongqing Wudi, Bai Qingqian, Bai Qingqiao, and the others must have retired. At that time, Zhou Yuanshan would be incomparably powerful. As long as he maintained the current momentum, there would be almost no obstacle for him to ascend to the position of president. With the return and stability of Tiannan, Ning Qianqing, as the first mayor of Xianyuan City, would inevitably become Zhou Yuanshan's right-hand man. Zhou Yuanshan, Ning Qianqing. At present, these were the two leaders of the new group that could be confirmed to be 15 years later. At that time, the new group would be more powerful than it was now. It would be full of talents, masters, and wealth. But would that be the peak of the new group? Perhaps many people thought so before. Even now, everyone thought so. But at the moment when Li Huaqing's trump card was revealed, Qin Weibai knew it was not. 15 years later, it was far from the peak of the new group. Their peak would be 25 years later. That was 10 years after Zhou Yuanshan. At that time, Li Tianlan would be nearly 50 years old. He would become the leader of the new group, the palace master of Emperor Dong's palace, the war god protector of Zhongzhou State, and the president of Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan, the president. What kind of crazy trump card was this? What kind of firm trust was this? Was it absurd? Not at all. As long as this trump card was revealed, all the contradictions and conflicts between Li Huaqing and Li Tianlan would disappear in an instant. Li Tianlan would hand over Li Guangtu and accept Li Huaqing's arrangement. At the same time, the academics would become the most trustworthy and firm ally of the new group. They would support the new group to maintain stability in the next 10 years, to achieve glory in 15 years, and to reach the peak in 25 years. Betrayal? No one was a fool. Perhaps the time span of this plan was very long. But Emperor Dong's palace was confident. Li Tianlan was also confident. Even if time passed, the academics would follow Li Huaqing's will. It was not only because of Li Huaqing's strong influence, but also because of Emperor Dong's palace. Emperor Dong's palace could be said to be the strongest superpower in the dark world. What would happen to Emperor Dong's palace 25 years later? Betrayal? Was the academic stupid? What was the point of betraying for the sake of betrayal? How did you know? Li Huaqing lowered his head, holding the tea, and asked in a calm voice. I guessed. Qin Weibai's expression gradually relaxed. She smiled impeccably again and said, the president's move is very clever. Now, perhaps no one could have imagined that behind the tit-for-tat confrontation between the academics and the new group was Li Huaqing's full kindness, appreciation, and sincerity. This was definitely a stroke of genius beyond everyone's expectations. The premise was Li Huaqing's trust in Li Tianlan. And it was only this trust. Li Huaqing was thinking for Zhongzhou State and the academics. From the president's point of view, Li Huaqing was very qualified, even quite excellent, in the past 10 years. But from the position of the leader of the group, Li Huaqing inevitably failed. At least in the 10 years he stayed in this position, the academics did not rise, nor was it as strong as expected. They had not even perfected their promotion system until now. Now, although Li Huaqing still had 5 years, time was too tight in these 5 years. And it was foreseeable that as the 5 years gradually approached, 5 years later, when Li Huaqing stepped down from the stage, the academics would face the joint pressure of the major groups, constantly squeezing their living space, which was also in line with the principle of balance. But Li Huaqing obviously did not want the academics to become a local group. So, he put his chips on Li Tianlan. His promise to Li Tianlan was very heavy. If Li Tianlan wanted to get Zhongzhou State, he needed the support of Li Huaqing and the academics to become the president. Li Tianlan had not even thought of this crazy idea. But Li Huaqing thought about it. Li Tianlan could not refuse. As long as he accepted, at least before and during his time in office, he must ensure that the academics was in the sequence of the top groups in Zhongzhou state. And the people he supported must be the people Li Huaqing supported. In this way, Li Huaqing's influence would last forever. Emperor Dong's palace would become stronger and stronger, and the academics would become more and more stable. Under such mutual influence, various chains were tantamount to completely locking the relationship between the new group and the academics in the future, and there could be no more variables. And this so-called future could be expected to be 35 years in the future. In 35 years, both Li Tianlan and Li Huaqing could get what they wanted. This was a real win-win situation. Do you think it's ridiculous? Li Huaqing continued to ask. If I think it's ridiculous, I won't guess the answer. Qin Weibai said indifferently. Li Huaqing smiled and whispered, at present, I'm not sure whether this decision is right or wrong. Qin Weibai understood the meaning of this sentence. Li Huaqing would give Zhongzhou state to Li Tianlan. But he gave Zhongzhou state to Li Tianlan, who was nearly 50 years old at that time. Not Li Tianlan, who was in his 20s now. Now, giving Zhongzhou state to him was equivalent to letting Zhongzhou state commit suicide. He needed Li Tianlan to become mature and profound in all aspects, and invulnerable. These 25 years were the time for Li Huaqing to cultivate Li Tianlan. He would make enemies for him, one after another, in all aspects, and constantly make up for his shortcomings. Time will prove everything. Qin Weibai said lightly. So, you're saying yes? Li Huaqing raised his head. His eyes were gentle and bright. I can't give you an answer. Qin Weibai whispered, this is Tianlan's business. He should make the decision, and only he can make the decision. Good, you know what to do and what not to do. There was a touch of appreciation in Li Huaqing's eyes. I'm looking forward to Tianlan. But I'm relieved that you're in Zhongzhou state. You flatter me. Qin Weibai's expression was soft. She lowered her head and looked at Li Huaqing's hand holding the teacup. I thought the issue between Liaodong and the Flourishing Age Fund would continue to be in a deadlock, but you leaked my secret. It seems that I have to take the initiative to talk to that guy. Li Huaqing laughed self-deprecatingly. You've already shown your strength. Qin Weibai looked at his hand and said meaningfully, the academics have also shown their strength. Li Huaqing thought, and his hand holding the teacup slowly moved away. Qin Weibai knew that the confrontation that shook Zhongzhou state was over from this moment on. Next would be a chaotic battle. The celadon teacup stood quietly on the tea table. Cracks covered the teacup, with a kind of balanced perfection. The tea was still in the cup, without a trace of leakage. Qin Weibai reached out and gently tapped the teacup. Silently, the teacup turned into a piece of debris. The tea in the teacup was like a phantom, quietly disappearing the moment the teacup was shattered. Qin Weibai was silent for a long time before she slowly said, "What's your realm?" "No realm." Li Huaqing smiled gently. "In a sense, I'm the same as you." After a pause, he whispered, "I'm the same as Li Kuangtu." "I know, you're different from him." Li Huaqing said quietly, "But I'm the same as you." Chapter 1234. After Qin Weibai left, Wang Xiaoyao locked himself in the study for nearly a day. No one knew what he was doing in the study and what he was thinking. He took out the documents and put them back. During this period, the high-level officials of the Aurora Legion knocked on the door several times, but there was no response. One day later, Wang Xiaoyao walked out of the study without drinking a drop of water and was directly blocked by several high-level officials of the Aurora Legion in the small corridor outside the study. The harsh and chaotic quarrel stopped the moment the door of the study was opened. An extremely burly middle-aged man was stunned at first, and then said in an excited tone, "Your Highness, you must slow down." Wang Xiaoyao frowned. Don't spit on my face." The burly man took a deep breath and seemed to adjust his emotions. Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and looked at the high-level officials of the Legion outside the corridor. The burly man, codenamed Mad Lion, came from the Wang family of Beihai. In the eyes of Mount Dibbing, he was a traitor like Wang Xiaoyao. He was an expert of the half-step invincible realm and one of the 2 deputy commanders of the Aurora Legion. Next to the burly and huge body of Mad Lion stood a somewhat thin and gloomy middle-aged man. Compared with Mad Lion, who had anger and excitement written all over his face, he was obviously much calmer. When he saw Wang Xiaoyao come out, he just smiled and did not speak. This was Wang Xiaoyao's confidant, whom he had cultivated in private when he was in the Wang family of Beihai. At present, he was also Wang Xiaoyao's most capable subordinate, codenamed Shadow. He was a top expert of the half-step invincible realm and was only half a step away from the combat capability of the invincible realm. In the entire Aurora Legion, except for Wang Xiaoyao, Shadow was the #1 expert. On weekdays, when Wang Xiaoyao's will remained silent in the Aurora Legion, Shadow's orders were the highest orders of the Legion. For him to appear here, it was obvious that something had happened that even he could not make the decision for. Wang Xiaoyao was a little surprised. His eyes fell on the 3rd person. The 3rd person was the oldest, in his 50s, and his face was more weathered. It was he who had argued with Mad Lion just now. At this time, there was still a little anger on his face. He was Eagle-Eye, at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, and also the minister in charge of the intelligence department in the Legion. "Come in and talk." Wang Xiaoyao thought for a while and returned to the study. The 3 high-level members of the Aurora Legion followed Wang Xiaoyao in. Wang Xiaoyao picked up the cup, poured himself a glass of water from the water dispenser, and drank it in one gulp. He walked back to the desk and sat down. He said calmly, "Tell me, what kind of shadow?" "You tell me." Mad Lion wanted to say something but hesitated. As long as the Emperor Dong's palace does not deny that the Dark Knights are their allies, no one will dare to touch the Dark Knights and touch the bottom line of the Emperor Dong's palace during this period. The Emperor Dong's palace is flourishing. Li Tianlan has climbed to the top of the divine list. Now, they need a powerful target to demonstrate their strength. No one wants to be the first to jump out. The Mad Lion intends to lead people to fight back against the Snowdance Corps. What's the difference between doing this at this time and courting death? If we lose, we will suffer heavy losses. If we win, we will run into the muzzle of Li Tianlan's gun. The Aurora Legion is now a very suitable target to establish our prestige. Wang Xiaoyao was thoughtful. The Snowdance Corps took the opportunity to expand. This may not be Li Tianlan's intention. After a full 5 minutes of silence, Wang Xiaoyao said softly. His expression was a little complicated. It may also be her intention. As soon as she left, the Snowdance Corps took action. Is she trying to disturb my thoughts and make me panic? In the study, the 3 high-level officials of the army did not speak. Wang Xiaoyao tapped his fingers on the table and fell silent again. Your Highness. After a long time, the Mad Lion scratched his head and said in a muffled voice, Do we fight? Of course we have to fight. Wang Xiaoyao said subconsciously. The shadow's expression froze. Wang Zhe opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Wang Xiaoyao continued, but we still have to give in. There's no need to provoke Li Tianlan now. The time is not right. Let's observe the situation in Zhongzhou State first. So we, Wang Zhe said cautiously, fight and retreat at the same time. Save our strength, Wang Xiaoyao nodded and said yes. Fight and retreat at the same time? How far do we have to retreat? They have been fighting all the way from there. It won't take long for them to control the Dawn Islands. The Mad Lion looked dissatisfied. Retreat until Snow Country can't stand it anymore. Wang Xiaoyao smiled and said, when the Snowdance Corps expands to a certain extent, Snow Country will not sit back and watch. They will take action. That will be our chance to recover the lost land. Now, if we can give in, let's give in first. Wang Xiaoyao stood up and said, "The shadow is fully responsible for this matter." The shadow nodded subconsciously and said, "Okay. Your Highness, you." Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and said blandly, "I'm going to Zhongzhou State. When I'm not there, the core will be handed over to you." Chapter 1235. The helicopter gradually moved away from the Dawn Islands under the night sky. It flew higher and faster. Wang Xiaoyao sat quietly in the cabin, squinting at the gradually blurring lights of the Dawn Islands. His eyes flickered, and he tried to keep himself in the calmest state while thinking about the situation in Zhongzhou State. Whether it was the reasons he had spoken of or the thoughts he had not spoken of, there was one thing that could not be denied. The situation in Zhongzhou State was more important than the development of the Aurora Legion in Snow Country. It was much more important. The analysis of the Aurora Legion's intelligence department made sense. With the announcement of the new ranking on the divine list in the Dark World, Li Tianlan was like the sun at high noon. In this situation, anyone or any force that got in Li Tianlan's way could not have a good ending. Li Tianlan now needed a powerful target to establish his power. The Aurora Legion naturally had the right to do so. The elites of the Snowdance Corps stationed in the Dark Nights returned, and the Snowdance Corps began to expand. This could be said to be a trap deliberately left by Emperor Dong's palace. From another perspective, Li Tianlan was now waiting for others to attack the defenseless Dark Knights, or for the Aurora Corps to fight back because of the expansion of the Snowdance Corps. There will be more of these traps. East Island, South America, and Zhongzhou State could all become traps. It all depended on who couldn't help but jump in first. The current Emperor Dong's palace ignored everything. No matter who made a move, under Li Tianlan's sword qi, they would only end up smashed to pieces. Naturally, Wang Xiaoyao did not want to be the target of Li Tianlan's prestige. Moreover, his mind was now focused on Zhongzhou State. Although the retreat of the Aurora Legion would cause him to lose something, he knew very well what was most important. Furthermore, retreating did not mean that they had no fighting spirit. He was not from Emperor Dong's palace. Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu, Gu Xingyun, the Wang family of Beihai, and other superpowers in the Dark World were not allies of Emperor Dong's palace. This meant only one thing to them. That was, Li Tianlan couldn't deal with him at present. However, he had to be targeted. The current Emperor Dong's palace was enough to frighten anyone because of their wealth, intelligence, military force, and potential. No one dared to go against Emperor Dong's palace, but everyone was eager to do so. To put it simply, none of them wanted to face Li Tianlan alone. The Dark World was waiting for an opportunity. It was an opportunity to unite many forces to target Li Tianlan and attack Emperor Dong's palace. Such an opportunity must appear in a relatively stable situation. To be exact, before the election of Zhongzhou State ended, the situation in Zhongzhou State would be difficult to stabilize, which meant that Jiang Shangyu, Li Guangtu, and Gu Xingyun would also be difficult to stabilize. Therefore, in the past 6 months, there might be undercurrents in the Dark World, but there wouldn't be too big of a disturbance. The expansion of the Snowdance Corps would not have an impact on the foundation of the Aurora Legion. When the Aurora Legion retreated in defeat, the subsequent intervention of Snow Country was inevitable. Wang Xiaoyao now took a step back in exchange for more energy to pay attention to the situation in Zhongzhou State. He was paying attention to Zhongzhou State. Wang Xingxiao was also paying attention to Zhongzhou State. Jiang Shangyu and Gu Xingyun were also paying attention to Zhongzhou State. Li Guangtu also got the attention of the parliament. In this era, people who might pose a threat to Li Tianlan were paying close attention to Zhongzhou State. There would be no big waves in the Dark World. Wang Xiaoyao was thinking about the losses caused to the Aurora Legion by his retreat and the expansion of the Snowdance Corps. After thinking about it over and over again, he could be sure that such a loss might be great, but it was absolutely acceptable. Therefore, in the roar of the helicopter's rotor, he once again turned his attention back to Zhongzhou State and Wuyue. The position of the Minister of Supervision of Wuyue could be said to be one of the issues that he and the Southeast Group paid the most attention to at present. The Southeast Group paid attention to Wang Qinglei of Wuyue. Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Qinglei paid attention to Wuyue itself. This was the biggest reliance for them to gain a foothold in Zhongzhou State in the future, and they could not afford to lose it. Ji Wenxiang had gone to Wuyue before. If the new Minister of Supervision of Wuyue stood on the opposite side of Wang Qinglei, it might be another storm comparable to that of Liaodong. Wang Xiaoyao thought about it, took out his mobile phone, and dialed a number. The phone rang twice and was quickly connected. A somewhat low male voice sounded. Xiaoyao. Wang Xiaoyao hummed and said straightforwardly, Xiaohua, what's the latest news about the Ministry of Supervision? On the other end of the phone was Zhang Xiaohua, the current Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Supervision. He used to be the Minister of Supervision of Huading and was transferred to Yuzhou 5 years ago. Now he ranked third among the Deputy Ministers of the Ministry of Supervision, second only to Ji Wenxiang and the Deputy Minister of the Prince Group. He had a high position and was also Wang Xiaoyao's strongest force in the Ministry of Supervision. Zhang Xiaohua and Yu Chuanguang were close friends. For Wang Xiaoyao, he completely trusted Yu Chuanguang, and naturally, he could also fully trust Zhang Xiaohua. Do you want to ask about Wuyue? Zhang Xiaohua's voice was a little tired. Now the situation in the ministry is quite chaotic, and the matter of Wuyue has not been discussed for the time being. The case in Liaodong is very serious, and the ministry is almost in a mess. Wang Xiaoyao's expression was slightly relaxed. The answer to the case in Liaodong had already involved the deputy speaker. It was inevitable that the Ministry of Supervision of Zhongzhou State would intervene. After Ji Wenxiang returned to Yuzhou, the first supervisory group had been sent to Liaodong to accept Zhao Yu's case. This was just the beginning, and there would be many subsequent actions. Bai Qingxian acted decisively, and the academy would naturally not sit still. Their current power in the Ministry of Supervision was estimated to have begun to cooperate with the Prince Group to put pressure on Ji Wenxiang. This would definitely involve most of Ji Wenxiang's energy, so that he would always focus his attention on Liaodong. That is to say, the matter of Wuyue can be delayed? Wang Xiaoyao laughed. But it won't be long. Zhang Xiaohua said softly, the minister is indeed under pressure, but to put it bluntly, there is not much that can be discussed. In the end, he will still make up his mind. Once he makes up his mind, the next thing to deal with must be the matter of Wuyue. Mu Guofeng must be dealt with, but it's hard to say who will replace him now. During this period, it will be about 10 days at most. We have to hurry up. What do you think about the candidate to replace Mu Guofeng? My idea is to hear your thoughts. Wang Xiaoyao said with a smile unhurriedly. Ji Wenxiang's intention to transfer Mu Guofeng away was very obvious, so the new Minister of Supervision could not be raised within Wuyue. It was definitely a parachute appointment. Wang Xiaoyao had a wide network, but he could not trust many people. If he was parachuted, Wang Qinglei's influence on Wuyue was also limited. Zhang Xiaohua's opinion was very important to him, and he had been in the supervision system for many years. He had seniority and prestige, so he was qualified to propose a candidate. He should first form his own voice in the Ministry of Supervision, so that Wang Xiaoyao could operate in the outside world through some old people of the Southeast Group. I have a candidate, and even more than one. But the one with the greatest chance can only be Chu Jiangchao. Zhang Xiaohua said in a deep voice, you should be familiar with him. Of course not. Wang Xiaoyao said with a broad smile, he is also the best candidate in my mind. The most important thing for us now is to protect Wuyue. As for the rest, we can take a step back, right? It's best that you think so. Zhang Xiaohua breathed a sigh of relief. If Chu Jiangchao goes to Wuyue, the opposition should be very small. The minister will probably agree. Chu Jiangchao, one of the 11 directors of Huading, was the Minister of Supervision. He was also one of the people who took over Zhang Xiaohua's position in Huading after he left. He was his absolute confidant. Letting Chu Jiangchao go to Wuyue could undoubtedly stabilize the current situation in Wuyue. This was not what Ji Wenzhang wanted to see. But this gave the Southeast Group another opportunity from another perspective, an opportunity that the Southeast Group would seize even if they knew what Wang Xiaoyao was thinking. This was an open conspiracy. For Wang Qinglei and Wang Xiaoyao, Wuyue was a place they would protect even if they died. In the current situation, for the Southeast Group and the Wang family of Beihai, Wuyue was not necessarily a place they would fight for even if they died. The premise was that Wang Xiaoyao could give them enough benefits. Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "I am already on my way to Zhongzhou State. When I arrive in Yuzhou, I will visit Senior Xie as soon as possible." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.